Hey everyone, what is up? Welcome back to Higurashi When They Cry. Today we'll be recording episode 18 of my Let's Play. This will cover chapter 12 of chapter 2, and there's a chance that it contains more. I might just play until the end, because I think it's very likely that I will be finishing this chapter today, whether it is in this video or broken into two. You can probably tell by the length of the video how many chapters I put in here. But, I mean, I think it's safe to say things are going down here soon. I mean, almost the entire last episode can be summarized by saying, we learned that Mion was almost certainly the one on the phone and not Shion. Right, that means we've been telling her a lot of things that we did not want Mion to know. And Mion obviously knows and has not taken any of this very well. I mean, we've seen her when we were on the ladder. We saw her horrifying laugh, right? She's losing it, right? And I think she, might murder us soon. Question, though, remains, and I'll look into... Okay, so the big question for me is, what are her motivations? She's told us a lot, like a lot. Right? Like about herself, for example. What does she have to gain from that? Right? Is she just trying to intimidate us? Is there another reason? Right? Like, is she like... I don't know. I really think it's hard to say she's trying to secretly play the ally right now. But, like, I can't... I mean, it's either she's trying to secretly play the ally or she's trying to instill a just straight up fear into Keichi. Right, by telling her all of the things of her past, right, is one of the big ones. And I still question, why did Rika die, right? I'm not completely sure still, because I don't think it's very likely that there was enough time between when Keiichi said he thought Rika was in danger. I don't know that there was enough time between that happening and Rika going missing for that to have been the cause, right? There might have been. I mean, there was like 30, 40 minutes where he was like calling, so I guess it could have happened. But if we're to believe Rena's theory, right, it was kind of pure chance that she went over to whoever's house. And it's like, so I could buy it if that's why Satoko died, right? They called over Satoko because they'd like already killed Rika, and they were like, whoa, we need time to cover this up, right? Or maybe Satoko knew where she was going. I don't know. There's still so many things I don't know. And so one thing I'm going to do is I'm definitely going to spend a lot of time, like I spend time trying to theorize like during the game itself. But once I finish the chapter, I'm going to go through and look at some of these scenes a little more in depth and try to like really put things together a little more, at least probably whenever I do the review session. So things are going down with Mion, and then Oishi too, right, is planning a raid on the Sonozaki household for soon, and so like it's all coming to a head, right? And so I don't know, I don't think I have a ton else to say. I think we just play the chapter, we see if we can see what's going on with the Sonozaki, see what's going on with Mion, right? See what's going on with Mion, see when Oishi tries to rope us into all of this, how that's going to go. It's going to be interesting. So I guess without any further ado, let's just go ahead and jump right into it. I know I viewed all the tips, but I'll look anyways. Yeah. Alright.
Keiichi.
放っておいてやれ。友達が行方不明になったんだ。気の毒にな。
Yeah. Normally, my dad never shows me any consideration, but this time he did.
うちの圭一もしばらくの間学校を控えた方がいいんじゃないのか？警察が何とかするまで外出を控えた方が安全だと思うぞ。
It might be, but...
そうね。もしもってことに比べたら、学校を何日かお休みにするくらい。
Well, let's just say that if he takes a few days off school, he's probably never going back.
それよりも、こんな物騒な事態になったら、 学校なんか休校にするのが筋じゃないのか？
Keiichi's dad kind of riled up.
まったく。学校の先生方は人の子を何だと思ってるんだ。
I don't really disagree with him being riled up. Like, kids that go to that school have gone missing recently. I don't know how you don't, like... I don't know. I don't know how you don't, well, I don't want to say I don't know how. But, like, the fact that they're just continuing to hold school before they've fully resolved the situation is kind of insane. Even if, like, in some ways it makes sense. It's like the village daycare. But Mom and Dad were getting pretty riled up. But at this point, I couldn't care less. Besides, that wasn't the only thing I couldn't care less about. The breakfast table, the food in front of me, the time and date, myself. I really had no interest in anything. This feeling was like a dead fog in my mind. It felt like getting dizzy after taking strong medication.
ケイチ、学校の勉強はどうなんだ？ケイチの方が進んでるくらいじゃないのか？もしそうなら、しばらくお休みしてもいいんだぞ。
I didn't even feel like answering. Today was Thursday. Only 4 days had passed since the Watanagashi festival. Such a short time, and yet now things were completely different. Everything had changed. The tranquil village, bright and clear as if it were an Indian summer, had undergone a total reversal. People were made to disappear every night, and couldn't even relax when walking out in broad daylight. The village had become a world of fear. I had no right to curse this outcome. After all, the one responsible for everything was me. That night, I couldn't resist my honestly tiny, little, and incredibly stupid curiosity, and broke the taboo.
ここは入ってはいけないところなんだろ？鍵がかかっているのを勝手に開けて押し入るなんて、たとえ物を盗まなくったって犯罪なんだぞ。シオンだって、これが合いびき現場じゃないと分かったなら十分だろう。俺はこんなのには全然興味はないんだ。こんなところにいる間にリカちゃんの演舞が終わっちゃったらどうするんだよ。
I prattled on as I took the lock from Toмотake-san's hands and put it back on the door. Man, he's just imagining a scenario where he, like, stood firm, right? I mean, it's hard to say, like, how different things would be. I mean, well, I lied. It's really not hard to say, right? It's hard to say what would have happened anyways, right? Because to our knowledge, in Chapter 1, Toмотake did not break into that storehouse, or at least wasn't there the whole time. I mean, he was taking photos during the ritual dance, right? And, you know, they killed him anyways. So, like, I mean, I think people still would have died, but, you know, Rika and Satoko, the mayor, Shion, yeah, probably not. I'll forget everything I saw here, so come on. Let's go, let's go. Takano-san was fretting, but I pushed her away. Toмотake-san's girlfriend grinned painfully. No, I am so wow. Reading comprehension. I can't read. It does not say girlfriend there anywhere. Why did I just put that word in here? And then I even pluralized this. The human brain is funny, because I could have sworn on everything I saw that for a second, and it's clear as day not there. Okay. Takano-san was fretting, but I pushed her away. Toмотake-san grinned painfully. Shion's shoulders drooped as if to call me an idiot. Even so, I didn't care. I pushed everyone farther and farther away. Rika-chan's dance was still going on. Dude, I forgot how to speak the English language. This is insane. Then, at last, her dance was brought to a close with a roaring applause. I, too, saw my hands turn red. I clapped. And I clapped. Ding dong.
レナちゃんじゃない？いつもの時間だから迎えに来たんじゃない？
I looked up at the clock. It was 5 minutes past my time to meet with Rena.
ケイチ、しばらく学校を休んだ方がいいんじゃないのか？
そうだね。気を使ってくれてありがとう。
I rose from my seat. I went to the entrance to greet Rena. Watch it be Mion.
おはよう。
No, I mean, Rena makes sense, but it would have been really funny if it was Mion.
今日から集団登校だから遅れちゃダメだよ。
That's right. If we, the ones farthest away, were to be late, the younger kids on the way there would be waiting for
俺
us.
さ、今日からしばらく休むことにするよ、学校。
Rena answered shortly, nodding.
ケイチ君が自分の体に一番優しい過ごし方をだから別に引け目を感じることなんかないと思うな。
She is being so unbelievably considerate in this route. And unless there's a complete flip here really soon, it's really gonna change how I think of Rena a lot.
それからこれ回覧板お母様に渡しておいてくれるかな。いろいろ大事なお知らせがあるみたいだから。
I took the notice. There were a lot more pages than normal. The one on top announced the disappearance of the mayor, Rika-chan, and Satoko, and if they wanted any information about them. It made my heart ache.
警察も必死に探してくれてる。きっと見つかるから。
Yeah, they're corpses, maybe. This is still unlikely, though.
待ってよ。ね。
Rena said, smiling in an attempt to give me courage. Rather than that, though, her smile looked like it was because she herself wanted to believe they were safe.
レナは俺を問い詰めないんだな。
うん。
レナは知ってるんだろ、俺があの晩。
西宮殿に忍び込んだことかな。
I was speechless for a moment, but then I bit my lip, made up my mind, and nodded a little.
筒抜けなんだな。まったく悪いことはするもんじゃないよ。
みーちゃんはすごく怒ってたよ。
So she was upset. Yeah, no kidding. I suppose she would have been.
でもね、きっとみーちゃんが怒ってたのは忍び込んだことよりも
He also lied to her face.
それを隠していたことだと思うの。ケイチ君は自分から言い出して謝らなくちゃいけなかったんじゃないかな。
I should have told her myself and apologized. That troubled me. Just 1 week ago, I did something that I, myself, should have apologized to Mion for. Yeah, dude, you just keep wronging her. I'd hurt her badly. However, I hadn't realized that at all. Plus, with all the confusion that Shion's appearance had brought, I still hadn't been able to talk to Mion about it.
レナの言う通りだな。俺はいつもレナに教えられるまで何も気づかなくて。
ケイチ君、もしもだよ。もしもケイチ君が悪いことをしたことをすぐに認めてみーちゃんに謝っていたら、リカちゃんとサトコちゃんはいなくならずに済んだのかな。
I mean, that hits no matter what. The validity of it, I genuinely don't know. It really depends on the motives for the killings. And I don't know what they are, so we're gonna move on. I think it's very possible. It's not gonna make him feel any better, though. It's gonna guilt him even more. I couldn't answer right away. I couldn't admit to that. Wasn't Rena telling me right now, though, that I should have admitted to my crime sooner? If I had done that and apologized, would things not have gone in such a horrible direction? And his eyes were filled with kindness, but they weren't naive enough to forgive me for keeping silent. They stared fixedly into my own.
ああ、そうだ。
If I'd admitted my crime sooner, Rika-chan and Satoko wouldn't have had to die or disappear. Damn, she just wallop him? Smack! The palm of Rena's hands slapped me in the cheek. I stood there unmoving, my head still tilted in the direction I'd been hit. It didn't hurt at all.
誰もケイチ君のことを叱らなかったと思う。だから私が代わりにケイチ君を叱るね。
I pressed a hand to my cheek, now warm with embarrassment, and quietly stared down at Rena's feet.
入ってはいけないところに勝手に入るのはとても悪いこと。それはわかる？
What is happening? She's like playing a motherly role now.
あ
返事ははいだよ、ケイチ君。
あ、はい。
そしてもっと悪いのは 自分が悪いことをしたのを認めないこと。悪いことをするのはとてもいけないことだけど、それを認めて謝らないことはもっともっと悪いことなんだよ。
はい、僕が悪かったです。
I really did not expect this first thing I saw. For a few moments, Rena stared at me, silently and intently, as if gauging my remorse. Then, finally, the tension in her face softened, and she smiled.
じゃあ、もう時間だから、私は行くよ。
ああ。
回覧板、お母様に渡しておいてね。あと、回覧板は暗くなったら持っていかないようにって注意付きだから。
I bent down to pick up the notice which I'd dropped when she slapped me. The pages had come out of the clasp, and were now making a mess on the floor. I gathered them up one by one. My hand stopped at a single, more light-hearted page. Peaceful? Bro, I'm Mike Tyson now. I'm lucky. With peaceful sentences dancing on it. We still have plenty of homemade soy sauce in stock. Feel free to come to the Sonozaki house if you want some. Yeah, I knew it. I mean, I didn't really think it was a stretch to suspect that they went to the Sonozaki household, but like, they're really laying it on at this point.
なんだこれ。
I picked up the page and scanned the rest of it. They were stockpiling high-quality soy sauce that they got from faraway relatives in the Akita prefecture. They'd gotten a big shipment recently. They couldn't use it all, so they wanted anyone who wanted some of it to feel free to come over, is what it said. As a PS, it said it arrived in barrels, and to please bring a 2-liter bottle or other container for it. That's how it tied together.
醤油をもらいに行くなら、園崎家か。レナ、お前ひょっとして知ってたんじゃ。
うん、知ってた。
Rena had already been suspicious of Mion as soon as she noticed that the big bottle of soy sauce was missing. Rika-chan had taken the bottle and gone to Mion's house, and there, she was erased. Rika-chan wasn't coming back, so Satoko called Mion's house since she knew where she'd gone, and then Satoko got called there as well. That meeting on the day the mayor disappeared, didn't Oishi-san say that the 3 families participated in it? The 3 families would include the Sonozaki family. Didn't he also say that their current leader was really old, so her heir, Mion, frequently stood in her place at public appearances? While the mayor was returning from the shrine, Mion called out and stopped him. She talked to him and invited him to their house, and then she made him disappear. It's probably even simpler to make Shion disappear. Shion is part of the Sonozaki family. They probably knew exactly what she was doing at all times. I'm sure they even knew her part-time job schedule too. Thinking back, wasn't that Angel Mort store managed by the Sonozaki family? Setting up an ambush for her there wouldn't have been any trouble at all.
俺、ミオンのところへ行く。謝ってくるよ。
You're gonna die is what you're gonna do, but I respect that he is gonna try to, I don't know, it's kind of hard to say try to make things right. I think, you know, this is still operating under the assumption that Mion did the killing. I would be more shocked if it wasn't, but operating under that assumption, I really think she blew it a little bit out of proportion, right? And something is telling me an apology is not going to change the fact that she killed several people.
もう全部終わりにしてもらう。ミオンはきっと簡単には許してくれないだろうけど、もうこれ以上誰も犠牲にならないように頼んでくる。
With that decided, there was no need for me to be lazing around here. I put on my shoes and slipped past Rena to exit the house. When she stopped me.
私も行くよ。
レナ、学校はいいのかよ。
学校なんかよりもっと大切な用事だよ。
It is.
レナは来るな。
It's always in twos. Don't forget it. Makes me think Keiichi and Mena, dude! Where did my skill of the English language vanish to? Like, oh my goodness. Something's making me think Keiichi and Rena are about to go. They're gonna get sacrificed, but like that's gonna end it. Or I don't know. Maybe Mion comes to her senses, sacrifices herself. Maybe that's a stretch. We'll see when we get there. I probably shouldn't theorize about too much when we haven't even walked to the house yet.
この上レナまで巻き込まれたら俺は頭がどうにかなってしまうかもしれない。
Rena didn't move her arm, which was blocking my way.
ケイチ君までいなくなったら私も頭がどうにかなってしまうかもしれない。だからケイチ君だけを行かせない。
It'd be one hell of a tragedy if Mion ends up killing literally her entire friend group. Rena argued boldly as tears welled up in her eyes. I saw them. I knew the strength of her resolve.
わかった。行こう。ありがとう、レナ。
Rena nodded slightly, but firmly, and finally let down the arm blocking me. Let's go. To Mion's house. I'll apologize for the crimes I've committed, then we'll put an end to these twisted days. After that, I'll pray that once more we can return to those fun, lively days. Yeah, something's telling me that's not happening either way. With Rena following me, I left the house. In front of the house, there was a car waiting. It was Oishi-san.
いやあ、おはようございます。前原さん、それから龍宮さんも朝から羨ましいですね。
Dude. Leering. What a truly praiseworthy man he was. If he'd been lying in wait so early in the morning just to pressure me into talking. On this morning, though, maybe this was actually a good opportunity. Yeah, he's been
警
thinking...
察の方ですよね。
He's thinking of doing the same thing as you are, buddy.
ありゃ、龍宮さんには名乗ってませんでしたっけ？これは失礼しました。私、沖宮署の大石と申します。どうぞよろしく。
大石さんに喋るのか？
うん。ケイチ君の罪は私の平手だけでは叶えるけど。
She said, yeah, I slapped you hard enough. I think that'll do.
みーちゃんの罪はこの人たちにあがなってもらわなくちゃいけない。
Pain and sadness. I looked down as his emotions built up in my heart.
大石さんにお話があります。
Seeing Rena, like... I'm still worried that this is, like, the craziest ruse we've ever seen, but she seems way too serious for that. I would kind of be shocked at this point if she went, like, full Chapter 1 mode. I don't remember what I was saying. I was in the middle of trying to say something, and I completely forgot what it was. And I can't exactly just rewind my video and rewatch it, so GG. Oh,
はてはて。
I remember what I was saying. It's crazy to see her kind of do a little 180, because earlier she, like, desperately didn't want us talking with the police. She didn't want to suspect Hinamizawans, and finally she's like, it is a Hinamizawan, and it's my friend. And we need to go to the police, and she needs to be punished, right? And so it's kind of crazy seeing this, especially because you compare that to Chapter 1, and it really doesn't... It didn't feel like that was her character in Chapter 1, right? So there's so many differences with Rena. She's going to be one that I'm going to have to, like, really try to figure out what's going on. I think... I don't want to say she is the key to everything, but she is a key. Understanding why she seems so different. And that's assuming she doesn't change back to her Chapter 1 self, right? But understanding what makes her so different, because it's so different right now. If it stays on this trajectory, it's just, yeah, it's a big deal. Anyways, let's move on.
どんなお話でしょうか？ここで立ち話します？それとも車の中でしますか？
車の中でします。
Alan continued to look down weakly. All I could do was be thankful for how dependable Rena was. Yeah, she's really, like, she's quite helpful right now, you know. She's very, very firm. knows what needs done, she's trying to do it. At Rena's urging, I revealed everything to Oishi-san. The latter, while making sure to throw in murmurs that he was paying attention every now and then, took notes. We continued that way for a while.
どうです。
Not great.
話したら、なんだか胸がすっきりしたんじゃないですか？
Oishi-san asked this while scratching his head with his ballpoint pen. Of course I don't feel better. The price that had been paid up until now for me not owning up to my crimes had been so immense. But as long as that payment wasn't returned, the load on my chest could never be removed. His radio started to emit static.
はい、もしもし、大石です。はいはい。引き続き見張りお願いします。了解しました。3号、7号は先ほど応援が到着、起動しました。あと、課長が大石さん探してるみたいっす。
Yeah, classic.
私のとこにも連絡がつき次第ってさっきから何回もうるさいっすけど、どうします？
Doing this under the chief's nose.
答えに窮したら、実は居眠りしてて起こさないように言われてるとか。
Bzz, the radio grew
い
silent.
や、失礼。仕事の連絡でした。
今、園崎家前は動きなしって言ってましたよね。
ありゃ？そんな風に聞こえちゃいました？
Sure did.
そりゃ困ったな。秘密にしてくださいよ。課長から内定の許可はもらってないんですから。
Oishi-san had suspected Mion for a long time.
事情聴取も家宅捜査も、とにかく何にも許可が下りないんですよ。園崎本家を守ろうという園崎家の防衛機能がガッキガキに作用しちゃってるらしくて、令状がなくちゃ私たち現行犯以外は何にも手出しできませんからね。
Is that what's happening here? He's gonna try to bait Mion into straight up killing them?
大石さんってひょっとして
Rena's tone of voice alone was enough to make her spite clear as she stared at Oishi-san.
園崎家に踏み込めないものだから
So he wants us to.
圭一君に踏み込ませようとしてたんじゃないですか？
レナ、それはどういう意味だ？
Rena's she's very smart. She's very smart.
この人は私の想像通りならとても卑劣な人。
Yeah, picked up on that quick.
人聞きが悪いですね。でもお説は拝聴しますよ。
Oishi-san lit a cigarette and responded to Rena, wearing an expression implying he was calm and willing to let her comment slide.
あなたは令状が取れないけれどみーちゃんが怪しいとずっと狙いをつけていた。圭一君を焚きつけて園崎家へ向かわせようと企んだ。そして圭一君に何かがあればそれを口実に踏み込むつもりだった。
Rena literally read his whole plan.
そうでしょう。
I only understood about half of what Rena was saying. I knew, however, that Oishi-san had been trying to use me.
その結果圭一君が襲われるかもしれないのに。
Yeah, he does not care about that.
恥知らず。
No.
これが警察のやり方なの？
いやいや、こりゃとんだところに名探偵がいたもんです。いやはやいやはや。あなた、うちの試験受ける気ありません？
They might need Rena the way she figured this out.
刑事課配属の推薦状書いてあげてもいいですよ。
卑劣か。
Rena spoke quietly, her words dripping with hostility. Goodness. It's like we're getting a very, very angry Rena, but not like the chapter 1 angry Rena. So this is like another different side of Rena that I feel like we've never really seen. Right? I don't remember her getting like visibly angry like this in chapter 1 without having the creepy eyes and the murder mode. Right?
私もいろんな悪口を言われたもんですが、若いお嬢さんの短い一言が一番答えますよ。
でも結果として今日までみーちゃんを逮捕しなかったことには感謝しておきますね。
そりゃどうも。
Oishi-san seemed to be enjoying his exchange with Rena. He's chilling. The things this man thought were like a swamp. I could barely see past the surface. It reminded me again how much I disliked him.
さて、
Yeah, he's slimy. He is slimy. I'm not gonna lie.
その園崎美音さんの親友であらせられるお二人は、私が証拠固めを終えて、令状が請求できるまで、のんびり待っててくれるわけですかな。
そんなの待ちません。私たちが行って、みーちゃんを自首させます。
We'll see. That's right. If she turned herself in rather than be arrested, she might get a lighter sentence. At this point, perhaps that was the only pity I could find in me to afford her.
さてさて、そんなにうまくいくでしょうかね。下手すりゃ、あなたたちも無事では済まないかもしれませんよ。
Oishi-san was measuring our resolve. So, in a strong voice, I declared,
そんなのは覚悟の上です。
Yeah, they were gonna go without you, like... Oishi-san gave us an unpleasant, yet seemingly satisfied grin. It was then that I realized this man was trying to use us for his own convenience. Took you that long?
もし私たちに何かあったなら、それを口実に踏み込んでください。犯人を取り逃がさないように、ぐるりと取り囲んでくださるのが一番の希望なんですが。
竜宮さんは交渉も上手です。参りましたよ。降参です。
どういうことだよ。
警察の人がみーちゃんの家を包囲しておいてくれるなら、これが万が一の時の保険になるの。
I don't even want to say she's much smarter than I would have guessed because I knew she was smart, but like, I don't know. I guess she is even smarter than I thought, right?
万が一の時の。
I definitely want to see more of this, Rena. Plus, it would be another way of pressuring Mio to give herself up, wouldn't it?
ああ、大石より熊ちゃんへ。大石より熊ちゃんへ。お友達が二人、園崎家へ遊びに行きます。増援をかけられるよう準備だけよろしく願います。
Their altogether too short conversation implied that her questioning was already a part of their plans. Yep.
では、参りましょうか。お茶菓子でも買っていきます？
Neither Rena nor I went along with Oishi-san's stupid joke. That's so crazy. Could you imagine in that situation if someone says that to you? Yeah, you want some biscuits? Bro, what's wrong with you? We're putting our lives on the line to like try to get our friend to stop being a murderer. You're like, yeah, you want some biscuits first? Goodness. Oishi stopped the car at the place where we always waited for Mion. Come to think of it, I've never been to Mion's house before. I've only heard that it's right down this road.
お送りできるのは、情報では、園崎本家は自宅周辺に監視カメラをかなり配置しているらしいんですよ。でもご安心を。何度か死角をついて突入できる位置に若いのが何人か、指向性マイクで中を伺ってますから、お二人が大きな悲鳴を上げてくだされば、すぐにわかりますよ。
絶対に説得しますから、自首を認めてくださいね。
I like the confidence, Rena. We'll see. In both her eyes was determination. It was the only method available to us for lightening the sins of our good friend.
くれぐれも注意してください。今さら信じないでしょうが、できることなら、あなたたちに犠牲になってほしくないんですから。
Yeah, that doesn't really shock me, right? He's willing to sacrifice us if that's what it takes. He'd rather it not come to that. But if that's all he can do, he gladly would, right? I feel like that's my read on Oishi right now. Right? He'll play slimy if he has to, because, you know, everyone's making him play dirty and slimy, right? But he really probably doesn't want people dying.
本当に今更だな。
With that rude response, we left the car. He said, no, we don't believe you. The clinging humidity and voices of the cicadas greeted us. I never have expected this would be happening today.
行こう、ケイチ君。
Rena took the lead and began to walk. Down the road I'd never been.
レナはミオンの家には行ったことがあるんだよな。
うん、何度もあるよ。とても大きな家でね。お庭なんか山が丸ごと入るくらいあるんだよ。
That's quite a phrase.
松茸が取れるとかなんとかで、 いつもは柵がしてあるんだけどね。
Big enough to fit a mountain. That was amazing. One of the three families controlling Hinamizawa, and the head family of the Sonozaki clan. Perhaps there was something to be said about its magnitude. The path continued onward, level and uneventful. There were metal fences along its edge, and beyond them were woods with trees growing thickly. The fences were high. The tops of them bent inwards, sticking out like sharp spears. Plus, there was dangerous-looking barbed wire wrapping them. No one could look at them and not feel intimidated. In addition, there were signboards hung up in there along the fence. Private property of the Sonozaki family. Entrance forbidden. Beware of venomous snakes. Active security cameras. Intruders will be charged an entry fee of 1 million yen.
この森、いや、山か、まるまる庭なのか。
庭というか、領地だね。見ての通り私有地ではあるけど、手入れも何もしてないから。散策ができるような気持ちいい森というわけでもないし。
Yeah, unless you want to find dead bodies, I guess. She could say that again. It really did feel like a neglected, savage woodland. It was dark and damp, and certainly not a forest that made you want to go for a nice walk. Maybe that's just what happens when a landowner has too much land. Like Oishi-san said, there were security cameras hung up all over the place, though they had been weathered by wind and rain, casting doubts as to whether they were even functional.
俺たちが来るの、ミオンはあれを通して見てるんだろうか。
Probably.
見てないと思うな。だってみーちゃんの家は基本的におばあちゃんとみーちゃん本人の2人しか住んでないんだもの。カメラを見張ってる人がいないし。
Suppose that's fair. What a useless security system.
みーちゃんのお父さんがいろいろ大変な人みたいでね。だから一族がみんなで集まるときにはちゃんと機能しているらしいよ。
That's right. Mion's father. He was a big shot Yakuza, wasn't he? Rena smoothly danced around the answer as she explained. At last, a huge gate, as big as I'd imagined, appeared. Was she living by herself with her grandmother? A house with such a grand gateway?
いるかな。
Beep. The old buzzer made a dull sound. Was it cut off in the middle and not getting to the house? We waited long enough without a response for me to start thinking like that. However, we finally heard footsteps walking through the gravel on the other side of the gate. I nervously balled my hands, my palms now sweating into fists. There was the clang of a bolt being released, and the gate opened slightly. The person peeking out of the gap was none other than Mion.
こんな時間に珍しいね。二人とも学校は？
Nope. Aren't you? Mion didn't seem all that surprised at visitors arriving in the morning, which wasn't a normal time. In fact, she almost seemed relaxed, as if she knew we were coming beforehand.
学校は休んだよ。
It's a little sus. Hopefully it's just that she had a feeling and not that someone fed her the information.
ケイちゃんはともかく、レナも二人とも不良なんだからな。
Oh yeah, for sure. Mion smiled lightly, in the way that the Mion we knew always did.
立ち話もなんでしょ。入りなよ。
She gestured for us to follow her. I hesitated for a moment, looking at Rena.
行こう。
Let's let her call the shots for now. Maybe she's leading us into the craziest trap we've ever seen, but... Rena smiled cheerfully, as if she were passing through the gate of a good friend's house, and then did just that. What do you mean, as if she were? I understand that Mion's done some messed up things. I guess, you know, in the circumstances, I probably wouldn't be giving a big smile. But she might think like, hey, this is finally ending, potentially. I rally myself and then go through the gate, too. You know, or it's a big trap, I don't know. On the other side, it hadn't been maintained very well, but it was clear that the lot was magnificently wide. It wasn't quite what you'd think of when you hear mansion, but it was very clearly a vast place.
ケイちゃんはうちに来るの初めてだったっけ？
ああ、でけえ家じゃねえか。
今時合掌造りなんて流行らないよ。観光資源にはなるかもしれないけどね。私は早くごくごく平均的な鉄筋コンクリートに建て替えてほしいと思ってるよ。
Mion dryly smiled as she said that, and then closed the gate and relocked the heavy bolt.
気にしないで。 最近は物騒だからね。日中でもこれくらいはしておかないと。
Yeah, right.
ああ、そうだな。
Maybe it was my imagination, but I thought I saw the hint of a shadow in her smile.
では、ご案内申し上げます。どうぞこちらへ。
Mion bowed to us like a worker at a high-class hotel, then pivoted on her heel and began to walk. Rena gripped my stiffening arm lightly.
ケイチくん、硬くなりすぎかな。
Yeah, I wonder why.
私たちはみーちゃんに会いに来たんだよ。そんなに緊張することはないんだから。
What do you mean you don't need to be that nervous? I appreciate you trying to, like, settle him down, but it's like, this is one of those situations where he is justified. Every little bit of nervousness he has is completely justified, if you ask me. That's right. When I get nervous, I tend to let everything show on my face. I mean, yeah, you probably do need to, like, reel it in and get a little poker face at least, but I think at least a little bit of caution is, like, important right now, right? You gotta be, you know, a little bit of nervousness. I'll stop tensing up. Even if something were to happen, there were two of us. The Wishisan subordinates were waiting outside the gate for us too. There was nothing to worry about. After thinking about it that much, I realized my nervousness was already gone, and laughed at myself.
なんだこりゃ。ミオン。この新聞紙の上に置いてある漬物石はなんだ？邪魔だぞ。
There's a pile of newspapers on the floor of the entrance, and there was a large rock on top of them. I didn't understand why something like that was here. Rena noticed me looking at it questioningly and giggled.
レナは知ってるのか？これはなんだ？何かのおまじないか？
ケイちゃんがよくわからないなら、それをどかしてそこに靴を脱いでもいいんだけど。
I feel like things are not going to plan. I've got a bad feeling right now.
ケイチくん、その石の真上にね、ツバメの巣があるの。
え？あ、本当だ。
人様の家なのに、ツバメが勝手に入ってきて巣を作ってるってわけ。
Okay, she was just doing a little bit of trolling. It wasn't something sinister. Probably.
代々語り継いでるのか。季節になると決まってここに巣を作るんだよ。迷惑してるんだけどね。
つまりね、そこはツバメの糞とかが落ちてきて危ないから靴を脱がないようにっていう目印なの。
I couldn't help but laugh at the silly contrivance. My laughter naturally spread to the other two.
園崎家も大昔、養蚕とかやってたことがあるらしくてね。ご先祖様はツバメ退治に躍起になったそうだけどね。それを思うと、これはちょっと罰当たりなのかな。
Guess so.
ま、上がって上がって。
Seeing them be goofy in such like a heavy, like what is bound to be such a heavy scene is just wild, right? It's like tonal whiplash. The inside of the house wasn't very bright at all. It was dimly lit, in fact, but mysteriously, I could still feel an elegance to the place. Mion seemed to want a more modern building, but traditional houses like this aren't bad either.
冗談でしょ。隙間風は入るし、冬場は寒いし。
That's fair, that would be annoying.
人の家を勝手に文化財にして改築を妨害しないでもらいたいね。
Yeah, fair enough, honestly.
一番の理想はケイちゃんの家でしょ。あれは羨ましいよな。冬場は暖かそうだし。あ、でも雪下ろしは大変かもね。
雪下ろしは大変って、そんなに雪が降るのか？緯度は関東より南なくらいだろ？ここいらって暖かい土地なんじゃないのか？
ケイチくん知らないの？ひなみ沢は豪雪地帯なんだよ。大雪が降るとみんな埋まっちゃうの。玄関なんか埋まっちゃう時もあるんだよ。止めた車が完全に埋まっちゃって見つからないことだってあるんだから。
I know these struggles. I wasn't aware of that. Hinamizawa. Was that bad a place in the winter? Come to think of it, my dad, he said something like, this place got plenty of snow, so we could have fun building igloos. Still, your front door getting buried? Not being able to find your car? That's way too much snow. It is a lot. I had to jump outside of a window once to get to school because there was too much snow blocking our door. It was really funny. It was back in like middle school. I mean, that's basically the whole story. It snowed really hard. I had to, couldn't get out the door. They didn't cancel school because it was a place that was used to snowfall, so they were good at icing their roads, right? I guess not everyone had their door blocked, but yeah, that really does happen, and it is annoying.
地理の授業で習ったでしょ。日本海側は大陸からの寒風がそのまま流れてくるからね。山脈で遮られてぬくぬくしてるような軟弱な太平洋側とはわけが違うんだから。
I didn't know that. I guess I do now. That's interesting.
俺、軟弱でもぬくぬくでもなんでもいい。
Yikes, coward.
寒いのは嫌だ。
Keiichi, I can't stand you anymore. That's it. I'm done with Higurashi. That's the Let's Play. I hope you guys enjoyed. No. Oh, man. I definitely prefer it to be cold than for it to be too hot, personally.
これは今年の冬はケイちゃんを寒さに慣らすための強化合宿が必要だね。
嫌だ嫌だ、全力で嫌だ。寒いのは嫌いだ。強化合宿も嫌いだ。両方合わさったらもっと嫌いだ。
Mion laughed more uproariously than she ever had, then told us she'd bring out some tea and left her seat for the moment.
でもね、冬は冬で楽しいことがいっぱいあるんだよ。冬の部活もね、きっと楽しいんだよ。
冬の部活か。実に嫌な響きのある部活だぞ。
I guess we'll just ignore the elephant in the room that this club is not continuing. Let's be real.
寒中水泳やら、雪中行軍やら、ここはいつから八甲田山になったんだ。
確かに冬場の罰ゲームは辛いのが多いね。雪が降ってる校庭でリオのカーニバルをさせられたことある。
Okay. I see the terror of our club cared not for the season. The victor would be decided by who could best adapt to the winter-only events.
雪合戦もやるし、かき氷の大食いとか、雪中宝探しとか。
I feel like you're just like driving it in, like without really trying to. Maybe she's trying to, but I don't know. It feels like you're just really driving home like, hey, half the club is dead, right? One of them's probably about to get arrested if the other two remaining members aren't dead by the end of the day. And the last one still might get arrested, right? Like, I don't know. They're talking about things like they're going to return to normal.
だからなんで外で遊ぶんだよ。雪が降ってんだから、ぬくぬくとお部屋でテーブルゲームで遊べばいいじゃないかよ。
ケイチくん、そんなこと言ってると冬場はいっぱい負けちゃうかもね。
She says you don't have the mentality. Yikes.
ケイチくん、罰ゲームいっぱいでレナは負けない。
はうじゃねえ。
I sold things with a cross chop to the head.
盛り上がってるな。壁が薄いんだからぶち抜かないようにしてよね。
The paper sliding door opened and Mio returned with a pot and a complete tea set.
お茶受けはごませんでいい？羊羹とか気の利いたものがなくて申し訳ないね。
あ、いいよいいよ。別にお茶を飲みに来たわけじゃないし。
Getting to business. And with those words, a smile disappeared from Rena's face. Ah, she did it. That one careless statement reminded us of what we had nearly been able to forget. I'd wanted to enjoy this peaceful time for a little longer, but we put an end to that with those honestly careless words. When she noticed the smile disappear from Rena's expression, Mion, too, changed hers. It was as if the cheerful air was like a warm spring day until a moment ago had slipped through the cracks in the paper door and altogether disappeared. There was no point in regretting it now. We did not come here today to chat and enjoy ourselves. Mion silently poured the tea. During that time, both Ren and I sat kneeling without uttering a word.
どうぞ召し上がれ。
We couldn't even mutter a word of acknowledgement at those natural words of courtesy. I can't help but feel like this is going to be like spiked.
毒なんか入ってないよ。そこまで信用ないかな。心外だね。
Mion gave a bitter smile at that and let her shoulders droop. Man, that's exactly what I was thinking, is that there was some poison in it. We all remained silent. We remained silent, hoping that someone else would speak up first. That was, however, the one thing we didn't want to do. It So we sat for a long time. At last, Mion smiled scornfully and opened her mouth to speak.
おいおい、ケイちゃんもレナも客はそっちなんだよ。用があって来たんじゃないの。そっちから切り出してくれなきゃおじさんも困っちゃうんだけどな。
Rena and I exchanged glances, and we both resigned ourselves. Rena opened her mouth to speak first, so I stopped her.
ケイチ君、
いいんだ。俺は来るべくして来たんだ。俺から喋らせてくれ。
Yeah.
うん。わかった。
ケイちゃんが私に何の話かな。お宅のお嬢さんを私にください。ダメだよ。うちのレナはケイちゃんとは釣り合わないね。味噌汁で顔を洗って出直しておいで。
Afterwards, I thought her mean remarks were Mion's own way of showing consideration. Mion had said those mean things in a totally normal voice. It drained the tension from my shoulders. Wait. Oh, aren't. I thought that said are. I was like, oh, she's playing matchmaker here. Right? And then they're like, her mean remarks. I was like, what mean remark? What?
ミオ、まず謝ることがある。
ケイちゃんが何を？
A lot of things. Mion pretended that she didn't know what I was talking about, but I had clearly gotten my point across.
渡流しの晩、俺は神社の祭具殿に入ったんだ。
I could see Mion's expression immediately become harder.
入ってはいけない場所だったのは知ってた。でもほんのちょっとした探検のつもりで悪気はなかったんだよ。でもいけないことだったんだよな。謝る。この通り。
To display my deepest sincerity, I pressed my forehead to the table. I meant it as a way of prostrating myself. I figured it wouldn't feel sincere enough if I raised my head right away, so I left it there on the table for a while. Mion didn't say anything. With my face down, I couldn't tell what sort of expression Mion had. Only the voices of the cicadas filled the room. Mixed with them, I could hear the sound of the clock ticking. That was all. When I started to struggle to breathe from having my head down for so long, Mion told me to stop.
参ったな。いきなり直球勝負で来るとは思わなかったよ。参った。
I looked up to see that Mion's face was calm, but she was smiling faintly.
ケイちゃんにとっては面白半分の探検でも、それが笑い事では済まないと思ってる人たちも大勢いるってことを。それでいいよ。郷に入りては郷に従えって昔から言うもんね。
あれからもう何日も経ってる。今更だとは思うが、悪かった。許してくれ。
I could feel pitiful tears welling up within me. If I'd done this sooner, maybe nothing terrible would have happened.
いいよ。ケイちゃんが悪いことをしたと思ったならそれでいいんじゃない？
Mion spoke like it was someone else's problem, and I wasn't happy about it.
みーちゃん、ケイチ君はちゃんと真面目に謝ってるんだよ。みーちゃんも真剣に答えてあげるべきじゃないのかな。
Yeah, we don't need to pretend anymore.
私は真剣だよ。レナには私が不真面目そうに見える？
見えるよ。
Rena was giving her tit for tat, and so the room's atmosphere quickly began to grow sharper. She was right. Even though I came here to speak from the heart like this, it's felt like she hasn't been taking this seriously. Obviously, Rena isn't fond of that.
ケイチ君、もういいよ。全部話そう。みーちゃんもそれを望んでいるようだし。
I had known it would turn out like this from the beginning. Hadn't I come here prepared for that? I mustered my willpower and bit my lip.
ミオ、おとといリカちゃんとサトコを呼んだろ。
覚えはないけど、そう思うに足る根拠があるなら聞かせてもらえる？
夕方過ぎのお夕食前の時間、リカちゃんが来たはずだよ。お醤油の大瓶を持ってお裾分けしてもらいに。
Mia was trying to keep from showing any reaction, but I did miss her eyelid twitching just a little bit.
どうしてそう思う？
そんなに難しい話じゃない。みーちゃんも見たでしょ？リカちゃんの部屋。
Mion put a finger to her forehead and acted like she was thinking.
冷ややっこがあるのにお醤油がなかった。そして流しの下にあるはずの醤油の大瓶も瓶ごとなかった。
何それ。それが私のとこへ来る理由になるわけ。
ミオ、いい加減にしろ。お前が自分で回覧板に書いたんじゃないか。醤油をお裾分けするって。
Mion scratched her head. I heard her ever so faintly click her tongue. It was as though we'd found out she'd purposely given too little change to a servant. That's all I could feel from her.
そしてみーちゃんはリカちゃんを隠してしまった。
Rena hesitated for a moment. I could tell that she didn't want to use the word erased, and that she was struggling to find another word.
そして本当はそれで終わりのはずだったんだよね、みーちゃんにとっては。
そりゃあどういう意味かな。
リカちゃんがみーちゃんの家に行くことをさとこちゃんに言い残していたのは誤算だったんじゃないかな。
And at that point, obviously, Satoko has to go too.
そしてさとこちゃんはみーちゃんの家に電話をした。うちのリカがお邪魔してませんこと？うん、きっとこんな感じ。
似てる似てる。
みーちゃんはちょっとまずいと思ったんだよね。リカちゃんがここに来たことを知る人間がいたから。
Yeah, there's only one thing left to do. If you've already killed one person, I guess might as well kill the witness, or the one who has the evidence.
だからさとこちゃんも誘い出そうと思った。
誘い出す？へえ、どんな感じでかな。
Mion prodded Rena on, as if trying to get to the good part of an interesting story. I, however, knew. I'd been watching Mion change the whole time. She was restlessly twirling her fingers. She had clearly lost her calm. Of course, it was really a slight thing, and only I, who'd been watching her this whole time, would have known. Mion was panicking. What Rena was saying must have been a bullseye.
きっとこんな感じだよ。さとこ、実は今日食事を作りすぎちゃったんだけど、食べに来ない？リカちゃんは先に来て、もう食べてるよ。こんな感じ。
Scratch. Mion's nails dug into her knee.
へえ、電話の内容の記録テープがあるわけでもないのに、どうしてそこまで。
冷蔵庫にさとこちゃんの作った2人分のお夕食が丸々手つかずでラップに包まれて入ってたから。
That's actually, like, her detective work was phenomenal. I do just want to say that. For a few moments, Mion's face was frozen in utter amazement. She looked like she couldn't believe this person in front of her was Rena.
そんなことで、どうやったら電話で喋った内容まで察しがついちゃうわけ？
長くなるから説明は省くけど、冷蔵庫の中身がみーちゃんの呼び出した話の内容まで如実に物語っちゃってるの。
Basically educated guesses. Mion's jaw remained on the floor. That was the only way I could describe her face.
これはとんだ名探偵が身近にいたもんだよ。まさか冷蔵庫の中身だけで電話の内容まで見破るとは。参ったな。参った。
Makes it so much more real seeing her, like, admit it. Like, we knew, but, like, jeez. I hate to see this. I hate to see this, man. Chapter 2 was targeted at me, I swear to you. As if a dam had burst, Mion convulsed into laughter. Her laughter, though, definitely didn't make us want to laugh as well. Mion grew tired of her dumb laughter, heaved a big sigh, and scratched her head. It almost seemed like Mion had lost a detective punishment game for the club or something, and her punishment had been decided. Oh, how fun that would have been if it were true.
とんだ名探偵か。みーちゃんこそ 大石さんがした会話の内容までよく察しがつくね。大石さんも私のこととんだ名探偵って言ったもの。
As soon as she heard Oishi-san's name, Mion's eyes began to display panic more clearly, so that anyone would be able to tell. She realized she's surrounded.
ミオン、警察はもうとっくにお前を疑ってるんだ。この家も大石さんの部下が踏み込もうと今も様子を伺ってる。
Mion attempted to feign calm, but it looked like she was having a hard time with that. Part of her couldn't believe that the police had her surrounded, and she closely examined Rena's facial expression. However, she couldn't detect a hint of falsehood. Finally, Mion seemed to accept the fact that the police were encircling the house. Probably has like a...
村長さんもみーちゃんが
She probably has like a big, like, hit here in case you need Yakuza backup button. Probably not, but like... Well, I don't want to say probably not. Maybe not. Maybe.
富武さんと高野さんもミオンなのか？
That's actually the one I'm most unsure of. Was it always Mion? I could clearly see impatience in her eyes, which were still feigning calm. At last, Mion had been sitting there lazily, readjusted her cushion and sat herself upright. At that moment, the atmosphere in the room changed completely. Is that a new spray? Mion's expression also changed. The impatience and wonderment in her expression disappeared. She became so solemn you would think she was about to conduct a tea ceremony. I could sense it. It was now, in this moment. Mion had ceased to be Mion, but had changed into Mion Sonozaki, the current heir to the Sonozaki house. That solemn atmosphere about her was clearly abnormal. It was entirely different from that of the Mion that I knew. Now, I could believe it. Now, I could believe that she was the young leader who commanded the entire Sonozaki clan. Mion quietly placed both her hands on the tatami mat and gave a beautifully elegant bow, as if this really were a tea ceremony, and named herself.
初めてご挨拶申し上げます。園崎本家当主跡継ぎ、ミオンでございます。
This is like much more sad in a way than it has any right to be. Or just like... I'm just gonna let it play. Mion's movements were so elegant they could cut, and we couldn't even answer her. All Ren and I could do was watch, baffled at her actions, which we could have never imagined the normal her doing.
本日はようこそ園崎本家においでくださいました。当主お領に代わりまして、皆様におかれましては、いろいろお尋ねになりたいことがおありの様子。私にお話しできることでしたら、包み隠さずお話ししたいと存じます。
This just feels so wrong. What? What did Mion just say? Mion said she would answer anything we asked. There was a strong light of resolve in her
本
eyes.
当に何を尋ねてもいいんだな。
知る限りをお話しいたしましょう。皆様もそれを望んでここにいらしたのでしょうから。
Ren and I exchanged glances. There was a mountain of things we wanted to ask Mion. However, we hesitated for a moment on what we should ask first. I would maybe... I personally, in their shoes, I'd probably start with are Rika and Satoko alive? The first question Rena gave was extremely abstract, but it was the question everyone wanted to know right now.
どうしてこんなことを
Yeah, that's a great question too. That was what I wanted to ask as well. Why would you do this? I didn't only go for Rika-chan and Satoko. I went for the mayor, Takano-san, and Tomitake-san as well. No, even further back, for all the incidents that have been occurring every year. Is it a leap to, like, would it, like, is it wrong to say it might be a leap to say everything is Mion? Right? Like, I don't know if everything is Mion. For a little while, Mion couldn't respond. Right when we realized that the question was too vague and tried to put it into more concrete terms, she finally opened her mouth to speak.
その問いに対する答えは少し長いものになります。それでもよろしければどうかご清聴いただきたく存じます。
Listen, I'll take any information you can give us. She spoke clearly. She spoke with a clarity that a grandmother might use when telling a story from a long time ago.
木南沢村がかつて鬼ヶ淵村と呼ばれていたことをご存知ですか？
I did. Is this new? Sounds like a new song. Rena nodded lightly and shot me a glance asking me if I did. I returned her nod. Hinamizawa was once called Onikafuchi Village. Yes. I heard all about it that night from Takano-san in the ritual storehouse. They firmly believed that demon blood ran through their veins and cut off all contact with the outside world. They were worshipped by those in the villages at the foot of the mountains and treated like transcendents, those capable of magic.
そうです。鬼ヶ淵村のご先祖様たちは、鬼の血を引く誇り高き仙人たちでした。麓の村々の人たちは、崇め、そして敬いました。ですが、そういう空気も、徳川の世が終わるとともに廃れていきました。
The black ships arrived. The era of the samurai ended. The era of national isolation ended. And the tradition of worshipping Onikafuchi village quickly disappeared. Those things that linger from the past were all to be detested. That was the kind of era it became.
明治になり、古い歴史を持つ鬼ヶ淵村の名称は、一方的にひなみざわ村に改められてしまいました。古い因習を一掃しようとする明治政府の思惑が強く働いたのだと聞かされています。
That doesn't really shock me. I wonder why they'd want to get rid of those old customs. The abolition of feudal domains and the establishment of prefectures. An era had begun, seeing Japan sprinting up the stairs that were beyond their means to try and reach the same level of the rest of the world. All things in the Western style were to be extolled, while all old traditional things were to be scorned. That was the sort of era it was.
そういう時代の激変の中で、滝壺に落ちていく花びらのように、
And probably did not take particularly well to
あ
this.
っという間に鬼ヶ淵村は消えてしまったのです。
At last, Japan, provoked by the great European powers colonizing countries in Asia one by one, began a policy to increase its wealth and military power so that it could stand as a global power in its own right. Conscription began, and they won war after war. The first Sinos? I know I have read this many times, but I don't know if it's Sino or like something else. I'm gonna say Sino. The first Sino-Japanese War, and the Russo-Japanese Wars. Russo-Japanese War. And until the Pacific War broke out, they recklessly climbed the staircase towards modernization.
この頃には、もう鬼ヶ淵村の不可侵性は失われていました。かつて仙人と崇められた村人たちは、否認扱いを受け、神聖な鬼ヶ淵村はいつの間にか、合病患者の隔離集落の慣れの果てであるという、根も葉もないレッテルを貼られ、苦難の時代を迎えることになったのでした。
Thus began harsh days where one would suffer unreasonable discrimination just because people knew one was from Onikafuchi. The children in the village at the foot of the mountain were taught not to go near Hinamizawa because filthy germs were rampant there. Children who had come into contact with children in Hinamizawa would cry and wail as their parents purified the spot they were touched by rubbing salt on it. One of the adults said to the children that if you got lost in Hinamizawa, you would be kidnapped by demons, cut up into pieces, and devoured. Never, ever go near the terrifying village of the man-eating demons. That's what he taught them. Another said that during a famine long ago, the people of Hinamizawa gathered up all the corpses they discarded into the dry riverbeds and cooked and ate them in order to survive. Groundless stories, but said in such seriousness. Baseless slander added to baseless slander, making Onikafuchi Village's historically accurate, thrilling history all the more believable. Perhaps the chain of undue discrimination was a manifestation of the people's anxiety towards the uncertain times. Of course, the story didn't end only with the perspective of children. Anyone found out you were from Onikafuchi, you'd be turned down from any job you applied for. People would even go back on engagements and marriage proposals. As for the marriages where one partner had lied about it, as soon as the truth got out, they were made to divorce.
裁判も起こしました。出身の問題は離婚する重要な理由にはなり得ないと訴えて、でも敗訴しました。出身の虚偽は結婚の上での重大な詐称行為に当たるのだそうで。
I mean, that is pretty messed up, I'm not gonna lie.
ひどいね。そんなの。
I've heard about such discrimination towards those in small villages in civics classes. Just because others knew you were from a tiny hamlet, you'd be subjected to every societal disadvantage there was, a modern form of bullying. So I only memorized that because it was going to be on a test one time. I recalled being suspicious about it, and unable to believe such discrimination occurred in modern Japan.
まあ、自業自得と言えないこともないのかもしれません。私たちのご先祖様は、自分たちに鬼の血が流れていることを誇りに思い、自慢し、麓の人々を蔑んで暮らしてきたのですからね。
Yeah?
その神秘性で、麓の村人たちを怖がらせ、畏怖と貢ぎ物の献上を要求してきたのですから。
Can't say I'm shocked they got a bad rep. With that, Mion smiled for the first time, albeit in self-mockery.
太平洋戦争中は国民一丸のスローガンが流れながらも、ひなみ沢村の人々はさまざまな差別を受け続けました。数え出したらキリがないくらい、夫や息子を戦場に送り出し、15の女たちも心がすさんでいたのでしょうね。当時をよく覚えている祖母は、それは苦しい時代だったと回想しています。
Even that bitterly long war, however, finally ended in
多
1945.
数の男手を失ったひなみ沢にも、ようやく父や夫、息子たちが戻ってまいりました。もちろん、帰らぬ者も多かった。
Yeah?
それでも、男手がなく村を維持することにすら限界をきたしていたひなみ沢にとって、それはとても喜ばしいことでした。
MacArthur's GHQ set to work on drastically improving mindsets and strove for the abolition of unfair discrimination. GHQ? I don't know what that is. I feel like this is like probably a real doctrine or something. Okay, so yeah, MacArthur was an American leader, served as the general of the Army of the U.S. Brief look, the GHQ, which I still don't know what it stands for, ordered a series of sweeping reforms of the Japanese government, which is, I think, basically all we need to know right now. That checks out. They could feel day breaking on the dismal night that was the previous era.
廃村寸前だったひなみ沢をもう一度立て直そう。そういう機運が高まり、村人たちは村を少しでも豊かにするために働き始めました。
And what? Give it 40 years, 35 years, and they're trying to bury it in water, drown it. That's the word. During that time, someone appeared who built up a fortune through a vast number of dealings in the black market. That was Mion's grandfather, the husband of the elderly current family leader, Sohei Sonozaki.
宗平は中国大陸に出兵し、ハルピンで食料倉庫の管理をしていたといい、撤退時に上官や仲間たちと共謀して軍の缶詰をごっそりと盗み出していたのでした。それを瀬戸内海某所に隠し、闇市で高値で売りさばいて大きな富を得たのです。
Sohei didn't spend the fortune for his own pleasure either. He entrusted the entire amount to his wife, the head of the Sonozaki house.
廃れたひなみ沢を復興させよう。村人すべては家族であり、現当主である祖母はそう宣言しました。この大きな富は、その後のひなみ沢の復興の大きな力となったのです。
I see. With that, Hinamizawa came back to life, and that's how the Sonozaki family had established its current prosperity.
もちろん、闇市で財を成したことを妬む人たちも大勢いましたが、もう村人は気にしなかった。
Yeah, their village wouldn't exist otherwise, so I can get it. They succeeded at one business venture after another. Those who had succeeded freely supported those who followed them. The giant family of Hinamizawa, tied together with strong bonds, kept on expanding its influence. The Sonozaki family, the center of everything, would be extolled for a long time as the minds behind Hinamizawa's revitalization.
その活躍の中心人物がみーちゃんのおばあちゃんなんだね。すごいよね。大活躍。
Mion looked like she was honestly happy Rena had praised her.
ですが、 昭和30年頃にまたしても逆風が吹き始めます。それが人肉缶詰疑惑でした。
Well, canned flesh sounded so hideous that just hearing it made me nauseous.
祖父園崎宗平の上官だったと名乗る男が告白したのです。あの缶詰は人肉の缶詰だったと。
Hinamizawa, a village in which demons lived and ate humans. Is there any basis for that? They were just about to wipe away that cursed stigma. The light they had finally started to see in their peaceful lives grew hazy and disappeared. The shocking truth was revealed by his former superior. Stolen provisions from the old Japanese army that had been a huge cornerstone for Hinamizawa's revival. Oh, no, it is, what, just actually true? I guess they might not have known, but, I mean, had been. Canned human flesh. That's, ugh. Why were there cans like that? Wasn't Sohei just the manager of food warehouses? His superior revealed that Sohei Sonozaki did not have the job of managing the food.
実は宗平は戦時中、ハルピンでペストネズミの駆除や伝染病患者の死体運搬の仕事をさせられていたのでした。
It had been unfair treatment, and all because of the lowliness of his origins. As a result, though, he'd returned safely without having been sent to the front lines or being detained. Perhaps that was the only fortunate thing to happen to him. Finally, Sohei was enlisted as an assistant at a military medical institution. There, however, he found something even worse than the low, scorned, depressing customs of Onigafuchi village, and the research they were carrying out. Oh, yeah, that checks out. Could that have been, well, you know, the bacteriological corps in the old Japanese army or whatever? Keiichi, you've heard of that? What could it be? I was pretty sure it was Unit 731. Oh wow. Did they? I guess they must have cut this from the from other releases, but I mean this is like the real history, right? I think. I've almost certain I have heard of this exact unit. It was a nightmare unit that devoted itself to researching terrifying bacteriological weapons to break the deadlock in the war. They used many innocent people as fodder for horrible human experiments. They methodically observed how many days a new strain would take to kill the victims, how many days it would be when injected, how many days it would be when swallowed. They dissected many people to find that out. Sometimes they wouldn't bother waiting until they were dead, and dissected them while they were still alive. They would strap them into centrifuges while still alive, and crush them in decompression chambers while still alive. When a live human decompresses, all the holes in their body get pushed outwards, and their intestines get pushed out of their anus like a snake winding out of it. Wow, that is quite a visual. Okay. I have a feeling I saw something like that on a documentary one time.
胸くそが悪くなるぜ。それでも、ひなみ沢の人間を蔑むのかよ。
本当に。
Mune agreed with me, giving a faint, sad smile. It wasn't much in the way of communication, but for some reason I was happy to have it right now.
宗平がいた部隊は、それよりはもっと温情的な研究をしていました。それは、戦地での困難な食料調達に関する具体的な手法の研究でした。
The military's designs at the start of the war completely fell apart, and a chronic food shortage broke out all over the battlefront. The food shortage led to malnutrition, and as their natural resistance is lowered, soldiers fell to one disease after another. Spirit and morale lowered as well. They wouldn't be able to maintain their forces at this rate. Apparently that's where the research started. At first, it was to find methods of delivering food to battlefields. It was very broad, and included things from violent methods like stealing it from citizens, to survival methods like how to cook unfamiliar insects and plant life. As they were working out the details, they kept straying off course and going out of control, until finally they knocked down a door called Taboo.
戦場で一番入手しやすいタンパク源は何だと思います？
Yep, okay. It was canned flesh. Ren and I knew the answer without being told, so we didn't answer.
そう、彼らは人間を食材として扱う方法を研究していたのです。彼らは時には敵の、時には戦友の血肉をハンデでも戦い抜くことが国に報いる究極の奉仕になる。
Was this like a real thing that happened? I like the cannibalism bit.
そういう教
I don't
義
know.
を 大真面目に組み上げていったのです。
I'd have to look into that. I've actually never really looked into any of the atrocities really committed there. I haven't looked too deep into it. I know there's some really, really bad stuff. I just don't know if that's one of them.
滑稽な話ですね。祖父を人肉食いと蔑んでおきながら、自分たちはさらにその上を言っていたのですから、祖父はいつも思っていたそうです。たとえ自分が卑しい食人鬼だとしても、彼らはそれよりもはるかに醜い鬼なんだと。だからいくら蔑まれたって、ちっとも答えないと。
At last, they had a handful of test prototypes. When the soldiers learned it was human flesh, however, the scientists couldn't make anyone eat it. It was apparently sent to the front lines. Cans were labeled meat substitutes, and so that they wouldn't accidentally eat it themselves, they stamped the bottoms with a circle.
お腹を空かせた前線の兵隊さんには、どの試作品もとても好評だったそうです。
Ugh.
中でも醤油で煮たすき焼き風のものが一番好評だったそうで。
もうやめてよ、みーちゃん。気分が悪くなってきた。
Yeah, we might not need those details. Rena really was pale-faced, and she looked like she was having difficulty continuing to sit on her knees. Mion looked like she had more to say, but she sighed lightly and stopped there.
じゃあそのミオンのじいさんが持ち帰ったという缶詰は
Or what was left of them.
真偽はわかりません。
Presumably.
晩年まで僧兵は人肉であることを否定し続けました。ですが、ひなみ沢の急激な復興を妬む人々は、人肉を売って財を成した鬼畜と呼び、
Suppose true or not
村
doesn't
人を
matter.
またしても蔑み始めたのです。
True or not doesn't really matter in this situation, or at least from their perspective, given that if it was true, they still got scorned for it. Even if it was false, they still got scorned for it, right? Seemed like people just wanted a reason to hate them potentially, right? And it wouldn't really shock me, right?
また、子供たちが生やし立てられ、石を投げつけられる時代に戻ってしまったのです。
If they were that close, I could definitely see why that would be extremely. I imagine that would be extremely frustrating, right? Being that close and once again back to being discriminated. The stifling silence came back. What a seriously hopeless and sad story it was. They discriminated or discriminated against. Discriminated and were discriminated against. Why must they attach worth and rank to it? Why can't they live without looking down on people? Why can't everyone enjoy life together, right? Right? That's what I'm saying, Keiichi. I didn't know.
当主である祖母は、ある時、村の子供たちにこう言いました。
If they throw a stone at one of you, then two of you must throw stones back. The children asked her, what if they throw stones at two of us? Of course, the answer was simple.
二人に石を投げられたら、四人で石を。
So her policy was basically escalation.
8人に棒で覆われたら、16人で追い返し、30人に中傷されたなら、60人で怒鳴り返せと。
Finally, the children asked, what if we're attacked by 1,000 people? Even that answer was simple.
1000人に襲われたなら、ひなみ沢の全員で立ち向かいなさいと。それは、決起を促す劇のようですらありました。
I see what you're going for, but I can't imagine that's actually going to improve the reputation of Hinamizawa, right?
祖母は、園崎本家当主としてだけでなく、ひなみ沢の母太郎として立ち上がったのです。
But I suppose in that situation you might not care as much about building a good rep, but rather like stopping the unfair treatment and banding together, you know, to stop it, right? I just don't think it's really gonna stop if you keep doing that. That's just how you keep generating hatred, but we'll just keep moving. It was halfway through 1955. It was a time when riots over the treaty with the US were rampant, a time of battle and action. The people of Hinamizawa joined together and fought, treating unfair discrimination towards one as a crime against them all. It didn't matter whether that one was a child or an adult. They heard that a child had been told off, then everyone would crowd the house of the perpetrator, acting as a whole. They heard an adult had been treated unfairly. Men and women, young and old, would all band together and stand up against it. Like, in a way, I can respect, like, the togetherness, right? But it's just like, yeah, I don't think that's going to solve the issue long term. And it didn't. If you meddled with people from Hinamizawa, you would be in trouble. They probably figured that if they could make others think that, they'd win.
ケイちゃんも街で不良に絡まれた時、
That is
たくさ
true.
んの人たちに助けられたのを思い出しませんか
That was a lot more than 6, but I will give you that. It was convenient that time. I recalled how much of an impression it had left on me, that the people of Hinamizawa boldly came to my rescue, yet the people of Okunomiya averted their eyes so they wouldn't get involved.
祖母が戦い、両親がそれを引き継ぎ、ようやく南沢にも平和が戻った。もっとも、その平和もとても薄い川の上に乗ったものです。この100年の歴史を見れば、今の平穏など揺れ返す天秤のたまたまの狭間としか言えないでしょう。
I love the fact that we're calling the time of, like, regular, like, almost arguably, maybe not even arguably, ritualistic murders every year, right? We're calling that the time of tranquility.
どうして？
Could I really have an opinion on such a long and difficult history when I hadn't moved here more than a year ago? Yet, I said it
ど
anyway.
うしてみんなで仲良く暮らし合えないんだよ。高野さんに聞いたお社様の昔話はどうなったんだよ。
Man and demon joined hands and lived together in harmony. Right, that literally was their founding. Didn't Yashiro-sama remain in this world to watch over that?
おとぎ話です。人と鬼は実在しても、それを調停するお社様は実在しなかったということです。
それでお社様のたたりを起こすことになったの。
A cool gust of wind blows in from outside, fluttering Mion's long, beautifully clean hair. Mion kept her refreshing smile without answering, didn't even change her expression, but even that became a silent answer.
南沢村を再び鬼ヶ淵村のように崇められるに足る神聖な存在に。それが我ら鬼ヶ淵村の末裔の悲願であり、
Back to trying to be above everyone.
園崎本家の鬼を継ぐ者の宿命なのです。
Yeah.
鬼を継ぐ者？
我が園崎本家は代々当主の名に鬼の一字を加える習慣があるのです。
Right.
私の名前を手のひらにでも書いていただければ一目瞭然かと。
I trace out the word Mion on the palm of my hand. Oh, she's right. The character for demon is in there.
名前だけではありませんよ。この体にも鬼が刻まれているのです。
Yeah. When she said that, she quietly rose and began to lay her hand on her clothing.
いいよみーちゃん、見せる必要なんて全然ない。
We believe you.
ありがとう。
With just that exchange, I guessed what she meant. Most likely, somewhere on her body, there was a permanent seal, such as a tattoo or marking, that proved that she hadn't inherited the demon. Mion didn't sit back down. She smoothly opened the paper door onto the porch. A refreshing breeze began to cleanse the damp air filling the room. Mion quietly gazed out at the wide yard. For quite a while, on her shoulders, was something I could never imagine the normal Mion carrying. It was the heavy, truly heavy history of Hinamizawa. No, Onigafuchi, weighing down on them. What kind of words could I possibly say to a Mion like that? Rina wasn't saying anything to her either. Only the voices of the cicadas drowned out the silence. At last, after a long period of nothing, Mion murmured.
この5年間の連続事件ね。私が直接関わったものもあるし、間接的に関わったものもある。
That checks out.
いくつかは園崎家だけでなく、他の御三家の君吉家や古出家が関わっているものもあるけど、そのすべての中心に私がいたと思う。
Wow, at the center of all of them. She said it all without turning around, with her back to us. At some point, her tone of voice had gone back to being the Mion we knew.
私は自分のしたことには信念を持ってるし、あるとすれば私の後継ぎも決まらないうちに舞台を退かねばならないことくらいかな。私を捕まえてそれで法治国家の体裁が整うなら
It's GG's.
それも時代の流れかなって。
Yeah.
この100年で一番平和なひなみ沢を見ながら引退できるのはひょっとすると歴代の園崎家の当主で一番の幸せなのかもしれないし。
Mion leaned his shoulder against the paper door, then slid down it and flopped on the ground. It was an act of such resignation that just seeing it made me hurt inside. Numerous terrible crimes Mion had been a part of suddenly began to fade from my mind. Hey, Mion, I don't care what happens after this. Can't you just try to struggle as much as you can? Try to run away? As soon as I began to think that way, Rena's ringing voice filled the room.
でもみーちゃんはリカちゃんとさとこちゃんを殺したんだよね。
Yeah, I'm glad Rena still has some sense. Like, look, I like Rion. Rion? Bro. I like Mion. But when you think about, like, all that she's done, it's kind of hard to say that she should just get to run away. Especially after quite literally just killing some of our friends. Right? The sharp points of her words stabbed into my chest despite not being directed at me.
他の人のことは殺してもいいとも言わないよ。でもとにかくみーちゃんは
Yeah, she's still got some sense.
リカちゃんとさとこちゃんを殺した。
Rena's words were more biting than any I had ever heard. Yeah, I wonder why. Even now that we knew all the heavy history pressing down on Mion's shoulders, she had criticized her for killing our friends. Yeah, I think that's still well-deserved, right? I mean, I understand having a heavy burden on your shoulders, and what that might do to you, and how you might go to extremes to like, you know, try to, I guess, relieve that burden, right? To move towards your end goal, but like, you still get punished for your actions, right? Like, that's how it goes.
私が園崎家の役目を負うようにリカちゃんだって古出家の役目を負っていた。その役目が西宮殿を守ることだった。
My chest tightened.
去年あたりからリカちゃんが言ってたのは知ってたんだよ。
Oh my god, was it actually the lock?
西宮殿の勘抜きが重くて辛い。もっと簡単な鍵に付け替えたいって。
Is that actually why she died?
先代の神主さんでも重いと嘆いてた代物だからね。リカちゃんに辛いのは重々承知だった。
僕がちゃんと番をしますですから、もっと軽い鍵に変えてほしいなのです。
I replied on the behalf of the Sonozaki family leader. Ever since the string of freak death incidents, there seemed to be people who are insolent towards Oyashiro-sama, so you shouldn't replace the lock with a simpler one. That said, the leader of the Kimiyoshi family, Old Man Kimiyoshi, It's that difficult for you, Rika-chan, and I think it's okay to replace the lock, he said. The very fact that it was locked with a key was an indication of it being somewhere you mustn't enter. There's nobody bad enough to break through it and go inside, he said. Even if we were alike as leaders, I couldn't find it in me to argue with Old Man Kimiyoshi since I owed him so much. In the end, we decided to change out the lock on the storehouse and switched it to a really cheap and light padlock.
おじいちゃん、本当に大丈夫なんですか？バッチャもできることなら鍵は前のままの方が良かったと言ってます。
大丈夫だよ。心配性だな。何かあったらおじいちゃんがちゃんと責任を取ってあげるから。
I guess he did.
本当ですね。君吉家の当主として責任を取られるという意味ですね。おじいちゃんもこの中に収められているものがどれだけ神聖なものかよくご存知のはず。
大丈夫なのですよ。このひなみ沢に鍵を開けて勝手に入ってしまう悪い猫さんはいませんなのです。
To be fair, in the moment, I think she was kind of right. Mostly. Takano, I think, is Hinamizawa, so maybe not.
にゃーにゃー。
Sobs escaped from my mouth. Something hot and wet dripped down in spades and fell onto the tatami mat.
西宮殿に賊が忍び込んだという話は 綿流しの祭りの最中にもう私の耳に入っていました。賊は4人。その日のうちに手が下されることになりました。同時に西宮殿に賊を許した古出家のリカちゃんと君吉家のおじいちゃんも責任を問わなければならなくなってしまった。
My tears dripped and dropped, until just now, I decided that it was Mion's fault, that she killed Rika-chan and the others. Are you implying it wasn't? That was wrong. The one who killed them wasn't Mion. It was me. Dude, I understand your guilt. And I understand you helped set off the chain of events. But objectively, it was still Mion. Like, objectively, it was.
俺が殺したも当然なんだ。
I feel like you're getting, like, guilt tripped.
ケイチ君。
I had a chance to stop this tragedy from happening, and yet, I didn't. Cheap curiosity got the better of me, and I didn't. If, at the time, I'd stopped us from sneaking into the ritual storehouse, Rika-chan and the others wouldn't have had to die. If I had, then nothing would have happened. You didn't have to die either way. That's the thing. Like, I understand, like, all the grief he's going through, and so it's hard to think that way, but we would be spending our days having lots of fun, like we always did.
俺がバカだった。
You were. I'm not going to deny that. It was still dumb. If by shedding tears I could take it all back, then I would have filled up the room with them. However, such a meager act wouldn't be enough to redeem myself for the crime I've committed. I still think it's mainly Mion's crime. But we don't need to keep saying that.
何も悪くないよ。
Even Mion saying as much. Mion gently began to speak to me, as if trying to reason with me.
私は園崎家の当主として手を下さなければならなかったけど、園崎家の歴史なんか今にして思えば大したものじゃない。そんなもの全部投げ出しても私は仲間を救うべきだったのかもしれない。
Yeah, that would have been nice, Mion. That would have been nice.
私がそんなものに屈したからあの二人を殺してしまった。それは他でもない。私、園崎ミオンが殺したということ。私には踏みとどまる100億の瞬間があった。でも踏みとどまらなかった。安易に自らの役割に屈し、仲間のために戦うことを放棄してしまった。だからこれは私の罪。私が殺した。
Why did she have that, like, smug sprite?
園崎ミオンがこの手で殺してしまった。それは何ら変わらない。何も。
Her masochistic laughter was sad, especially because Mion boasted in club that she would turn the tables on whatever predicaments presented themselves. It was so painful.
でもみーちゃんは自分の意志で一人だけ救ったんだね。
She did do that.
え？
So I looked at her surprised. Rena stuck her finger right in my forehead.
ケイチ君だけをこんなにも強い力を持つみーちゃんなら造作もなかったろうに。でも殺さなかったんだよね。
That is true. So that strength is there. I guess she just cared more about Keiichi than the other two. If we're being real. That's right. Mion was so cunning that nobody could stand up to her, even in our club. If she had seriously tried to kill me, I would have been dealt with on the very first night. So many people had been sacrificed, but I was always left out in the cold. When did I first realize it? Even though people were disappearing one after the other, for some reason I had this vague belief that only I would be left alive.
さて、どうして殺さなかったのかね。鬼の私には見当もつかないわ。ミオンの方に殺したくない都合でもあったんじゃないの？
そりゃどういう意味だよ。
Shh. Mion put a finger at her lips to say that Rena didn't need to talk.
大石は外で待ってんの？
Not too far.
逃げ場は？
Not really.
ない。ぐるっと囲んでるって言ってた。無線でたくさんの車が来てるみたいだったよ。みーちゃん家の広い敷地を 全部囲んでると思う。
Mion fell silent. Rena's merciless words felt cruel. I mean, we're talking about Mion. She could still find a way out, if I had to guess, but they weren't meant to be. Maybe they were trying to lessen her good friend's pain, if only by a little. Maybe they were considerate, like she was trying to help, like don't even bother, like, sorry, like just turn yourself in.
自首しよう。
Oh, yeah, there it is, literally. Mion didn't open her mouth, but she smiled, just a little.
私たちも一緒に行くよ。親友を一人きりになんか絶対に。
泣くことレナには勝てないわ。
She rose, scratching her head. Her face overturned entirely to that of the usual Mion.
自分で自分の罪、どのくらいになるかよくわかってる。たとえ自首が認められても、多分もうここに帰ってくることもないと思う。
Yeah, probably not. I couldn't say anything. The number of deaths Mion was involved in was just too large. So much so that maybe recommending that she turn herself in was, in a way, extremely cruel.
だから最後にわがままを聞いてほしいな。
What do you got for us, Mion?
何かな。
30分でいいから、ケイちゃんと二人きりにしてほしい。
Huh? My name suddenly came up, and it looked like I was the only one surprised about that. Yeah, it doesn't really shock me.
ケイチ君、どうかな。
Oh, I guess here's to hoping he doesn't die now.
ケイチ君が嫌なら無理にとは言えない。
そうだね。嫌ならそれでもいいよ。私は鬼だもの。ケイちゃんはよそから引っ越してきた正真正銘の人間。相入れることなんてお社様が実在して仲介してくれない限り
Is that how she's
絶
always
対に
felt?
ない。
Maybe that's how she's always felt about all this. That it just, like, isn't meant to be type thing. There's no reason for me to hesitate. Mion had been engulfed by heavy, unopposable tradition. The one who had forced her to kill her friends with her own hands. That was me. And me alone. I still... I've been over this so many times. Still don't really agree with this, but... In fact, with me cornered, it would have been okay for her to blame me. However, Mion didn't say one word of blame. Far from it. I was guilty of the same crime. And she let me go. Amidst the fate she could not oppose, she saved me alone. I didn't know whether I should be thankful for that. Thinking upon it now, I didn't know how much easier it would be. If I were to be granted the same punishment as Rika-chan and the others. Yeah, you wouldn't have to live with the guilt, the pain. And frankly, they don't call death the easy way out for nothing. The only thing I knew for sure was that I had an equal duty to bear. The sins that Mion shouldered. So, when it came to Mion's last request, there was no reason for me to hesitate.
ああ、いいぜ。
ありがとう。
私からもありがとうを言うよ、ケイチ君。
Rena stood up. It looked like she would keep her promise with Mion and leave.
いいよレナ。ここで待っててくれれば。ケイちゃんとは庭をぐるりと回りたいだけだから。
Oh no, don't tell me we're gonna find the bodies.
退屈だったら私の部屋へ行けばいい。
Whoops.
なんだったらお気に入りの単行本丸ごと持ってってもいい。
Yeah, might as well, I guess.
嫌だよ。みーちゃんの本はみーちゃんのものだもの。勝手にレナの家に持って帰れない。
I can respect that. You know, arguably a little wasteful, but I can get it.
あんたはこんな時に限っていい子なんだから。
Mion took Rena's head and rubbed it violently like I always did.
じゃあ行こう、ケイちゃん。
Alright, let's see what she's got to tell us or show us. I'm worried it's going to be the bodies, but... I began to walk after Mion, who headed for the hallway, when Rena silently stopped me.
みーちゃんもよろしくね。
ああ、
みーちゃん、もう二度と帰ってこれないって
Yeah.
確信してる。
Yeah. I didn't know much about laws. With as many deaths as she'd been involved in, the chances of her escaping a heavy punishment seemed non-existent.
みーちゃんが短気を起こさないように見張ってね。
Yeah, that's the real concern. Mion might not surrender herself to justice, but instead choose to put an end to things herself. Ren had already thought that far ahead. She might even be trying to get Keiichi to do it. Like, marry me next to Rika type deal.
そんなこと絶対にさせないから。
Brenda rubbed at her tears, which had fallen without me noticing them.
じゃあ言ってあげて。
I nodded and followed Mion, who had disappeared out the front door. I could clearly hear Rena sobbing from the other side of the paper door.
どうしてみーちゃんは鬼なんか継がされちゃったんだろうね。それは仕方のないことだったんだろうね。
It is quite a burden to bear.
でもあんまりにもかわいそうだよね。
It is. Something hot burned down my cheeks. They were my tears. I fiercely wiped them away. This was the last of my time I could offer to Mion, so I absolutely didn't want to let her see my tears during it. Mion was already waiting outside the front door. Okay, I'm not gonna stop here. There's a 0% chance I stop here. If this is, like, if this is a chapter transition, there's no way. This should just be a scene transition. That would be such an insane disruption to the flow of the game, I feel. Okay, good. I put on my shoes, tapped my toes against the floor a few times, then left, and Mio timidly came over. Why is she turning all red at a time like this?
腕組んでもいいかな。
What is she? Finally gonna live out what she'd wanted, I guess? It was such a modest request.
別に構わないぞ。
With my permission, her face lit up with glee, like a child being given a toy, and took my arm.
私に腕を組まれたらなんだか緊張しちゃわない？例えば急に関節技を決められちゃうんじゃないかななんて思ったりとか。
姉妹揃って同じことを言うんだな。思わないよ。全然。
Back when nothing had gone wrong yet. During those nostalgic days of the bustling commotion at Angel Mort, I counted back and was amazed. It had only been 1 week ago. I'd been arm in arm with Shion then, too. Linking arms with Mion like this really reminded me that they were twins. How much strength they put into it, the sensation of their arms, their warmth, and the blood flowing. I could feel that their living sensations were all exactly the same.
シオンもケイちゃんのことが好きだったみたい。
Wouldn't shock me.
そうなんだ。
If this were a regular conversation, I might have jumped back, red in the face. Right now, though, no matter what I heard, my mind remained at peace.
ミオンとシオンは仲は良かったんだろ？
Sometimes.
さあどうかな。ケイちゃんは自分の右手と左手は仲がいいと思う？
That is a really interesting analogy.
え？右手と左手？それは仲がいいとか悪いとか、そういう言い方で例えるものじゃないな。
Yes, that's her point.
そういう関係だから。仲がいいとか悪いとかそういう尺度では測れない関係。
That didn't sound like it meant they got along really well. Yeah.
例えば利き腕というものがあるように右手と左手には間違いなく優劣の違いがある。
Not for everyone, but just, you know.
もしも鍋つかみが片方しかなかったら迷うことなく利き腕にするでしょ。
Right?
そういう差はあったんじゃないかと思う。だからといって左手がなくなったっていいなんて思う人は誰もいないはず。そんなよくわからない関係だね。
It's one of the strangest analogies I've ever heard, but it
多分
works.
それは近くにいすぎるから見えなくなっているだけで、きっととても仲のいいことなんだと思う。俺は一人っ子だから、祭りの前日、ミオンとシオンが二人してじゃれ合っているのをすごく羨ましいと思った。
ないものねだりじゃないの。双子なんて昔は人をからかったりしてそこそこに面白かったけど、こうして互いがはっきりと異なる個性を持った今ではかえって邪魔なだけ。
I can believe that, but you can still be close while having very different personalities. This is just such a wild analogy to me. Right? Like, kind of sounds like, to me, she's basically saying, like, look, I'm the heir, right? and like everyone knew it, and so I was the one who got like all the protection. I got all the things, right? Is what that says to me. It's just something I was thinking about. Were they cursed, or were they self-conscious? The relationship was hard to understand for an outsider. Maybe that wasn't an issue someone like me should intrude on. Just staying silent and nodding gently was the best way to advance the conversation. Mion passed through the wide yard and invited me into the big, desolate forest we'd seen on the way in. Such a big forest was a part of their property, so I couldn't help but feel small.
でかい森だな。子供の頃はいい遊び場だったんじゃないのか?
Maybe not. No, she is. Okay. Mion seemed to be silently reminiscing. I couldn't look into her mind. She was probably thinking back to those fun days when they played as sisters without any antagonism. Every time the wind blew, it caressed the treetops and the leaves, making a swishing, murmuring sound. Mion remained silent for a long time, thinking back on her younger sister, whom she had gotten rid of with her own hands. There's no need for me to get a word in. Just walking like this, arm in arm, was enough. Mion suddenly stopped and turned.
シオンはまだ生きてる。
What?
本当か?
Mion took a hard look into my eyes, then nodded quietly. I guess she never confirmed that she killed her.
誰よりもむごたらしい死に方をさせてやろうとずっと考えて閉じ込めておいたけど。
That's such a normal sentence to say.
今日までその方法はとうとう思いつかなかった。
Mion sounded as though she hated Shion, but also, deep down, she didn't completely detest her. I took my other hand and rustled Mion's hair with it. Mion didn't only save me. She saved Shion, too. Mion may have become a demon and led many people to their deaths. She fought against it, was able to save 2 people. As I petted Mion, she narrowed her eyes in an entranced smile and untangled her arm from mine. Then Mion quietly said,
来て。私の罪のすべてを見てほしいから。でもそれはケイちゃんにとってこの上なく辛い光景かもしれない。
Yeah, probably. Do we really want to see this? I could sense it. There I would probably find all the sacrifices up until now. Looking at them would mean accepting Rika-chan and Satoko's deaths, as well as accepting that my best friend had done it.
すでに起こり終わってしまった事実だけれども。
Fair.
ケイちゃんは見ないことを選んでもいい。
I think, as a player, I would personally like if we kind of confirmed all this. But we'll see.
そうならばここで待っていて。私の手で全て終わらせるから。
Yeah, that sounds like she's trying to kill herself. I was taken aback by how ominous that sounded. I remembered what Rena had told me. Mio might not surrender herself to justice, but choose to put an end to things herself. I couldn't leave her on her own. Besides, I agreed to her last request, didn't I? Even if it was hard for me to accept, I'll still do it. Even if I avoided looking, was something that had already happened.
何を見たって？俺にとっての園崎美音は最高の親友だ。
God. I've had so much time to accept this, but it is still difficult. You can only imagine being in Keiichi's shoes and this is actually your best friend, right? I literally can't even imagine.
それは変わらない。
I hope I never have to imagine. I don't know. Maybe they got a dark secret I don't know about.
一生。
The treetops softly swayed in the wind.
あんたもレナもどうしてこんな時ばかりかっこよくなるんだろうね。
Only. No way you threw the shade right before all this. Normally I'd say something rude right back at her, evading the question. But today I didn't. I just answered with a smile. At last, Mion started walking into the thick forest, into the deepest part. I'm kind of worried that... one of my early predictions in this episode was there are 2 last sacrifices, with Keiichi being one of them. And at first I was thinking Rena, but I think I kind of was wait, I could see Mion killing yourself as a way of repentance. And I'm like, wait, is that actually about to happen? I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if justice, as it, takes its due course, or if that's what's going to happen. I kind of hope Keiichi gets to live this route. That'd be cool, right? After following a thin path that looked like an animal trail for a while, we finally came across a steep incline with a tunnel that reminded me of a coal mine or bomb shelter. We were surrounded by shallow hills. It had been created in a spot not visible from the outside. There were many silhouettes of crows in the trees here and there. The abnormal odor I'd been smelling for a while was doubtlessly escaping from inside this place.
引き返すなら今だよ。ケイちゃんの中の園崎ミオンがどんな人かは知らないけれど、中に入れば、そのミオンはきっと。
Yeah,
変わらない。何度だって言う。園崎ミオンは、俺の最高の親友だ。
I clenched my fists. Inside there was probably a sight beyond anything I could imagine. That sounds like she's admitting that she might not be able to control her self while she's in there. If I let my guard down, I might end up vomiting. You also might end up shanked. Even so, I'll endure it. I'll overcome this pain and this suffering. It will never change. And Mion is my greatest friend.
私はただの鬼だから、もう人間の気持ちはわからないけれど、ミオンがあんたを好きになったの、よくわかる気がする。
Okay, for the longest time, I was beating around the bush whether this was romantic interest, but I think it's kind of hard to deny it now. I had always read it that way, but.
他人事のように言うな。お前はミオンだ。鬼じゃない。血の通った人間で、俺の仲間なんだ。
Mio made a gesture like she was wiping tears from her eyes, and placed a hand on the big door of the tunnel entrance. The lock on it was dauntingly strong-looking. It seemed to demand the appropriate resolution from whoever would enter, just like the ritual storehouse. When the double doors opened, a stifling, rotten air and a bunch of winged insects came rushing out. I remembered accidentally killing a hermit crab a long time ago by leaving its tank out on the porch, and how intense the odor it left was. That was the smell of a corpse. That's certainly what this smelled like. Inside, it was pitch black. Mion flicked a switch that turned on a light bulb, illuminating the interior. The path turned into a series of intricate wooden tunnels. We passed spaces that looked like they were for storage. We passed places that looked like someone had lived there. All this indicated that it had been used as a bomb shelter and stockpile during the war. It didn't give an impression of a dugout bomb shelter that had just been left there, though. There was a sense of dignity, as though this were a second Sonozaki house constructed underground. Despite being in pitch darkness below the ground, the voices of the cicadas were entering through an air hole somewhere, giving it a very mysterious feel. Of course they were. Cicadas always have to chirp in this game. It's the rule.
西宮殿の中、見たよね。あの拷問道具の山を。
Right.
あれはすべて鬼ヶ淵村の厳しい戒律を守るために作られたものだった。
Right.
戒律を破った者を見せしめにむごたらしく殺してみせる。
I think way back
そういう道具だった。
I think way back 2 years ago, that was one of my predominant theories for what was going on in there. That it was just fear-mongering in a way.
大昔の話だろ。
本来は見せしめの儀式。渡流しは御三家が取り仕切る儀式だったんだけど、君吉家と古出家の衰退、そして時代の変化によって行うことはとても難しくなった。
そりゃそうだな。この現代日本で犠牲者をのんびりと沢でばらして殺せるなんて思えない。
Yeah.
だから園崎家は作ったの。現代でも渡流しの儀が行えるように。秘密の場所を。
Mion opened a large, strikingly different door, and inside was none other than a modern storehouse for ritual implements. Yeah, gonna say that makes sense, because the old ones were all poorly maintained. I don't know if I figured that back then, but, I'm not shocked that, there's a modern version of it, with maintained implements.
いろいろ
Oh, yep.
あるでしょ。一部のものは実際に西宮殿から運び込まれたものなんだよ。
All of the things there had been rusty and covered in dust, so they didn't seem that real. But the things in here were different. Every one of them had been well maintained, and kept in a state that they could be used right away. Blades gleamed, and spikes were sharpened. Also, perhaps as a precaution for the splatter of blood, the walls and ceiling were covered in the kind of tiling you would see in bathrooms. There was even a drain set amidst a slight slope in the floor. There was also a coiled rubber hose along the wall attached to a faucet, perhaps for cleaning up the splattered blood.
大昔の当主の書き物によるとね、血のしぶきってのは犠牲者に負担をかけない割にはインパクトがあるんだってさ。綿流しは見せしめのショーだったから、私のご先祖様たちは様々なショーを考案してたんだよ。
As she said that, Mion pointed deeper into the torture room to a spot veiled in darkness. Okay, so... yeah. Just seeing it as the impact of being a deterrent is what they're saying. As she said that, Mion pointed deeper into the torture room to a spot veiled in darkness. There was surprisingly a room floored with tatami mats, and in the corner was a pile of cushions.
鑑賞席なんだよ。綿流しは見せしめのショーだから。
So what, they brought people there and made them watch?
客がいなきゃ意味がない。
I couldn't speak, and I couldn't think of anything to say anyway, except that if Mion revealing all this to me made her heart feel any lighter, and I was prepared to listen for as long as I needed to.
みんなここで、私が殺した。見てくれている観客はいなかったけど、私は綿流しを上手にやってみせた。いや、観客は一人だけいたかな。
え、観客？
私という鬼が、ミオンの執り行う綿流しをずっと見てたから。
Mion cackled in self-deprecation. It wasn't a nice-sounding laugh.
向こうが牢屋。
シオンはそこにいるのか？
She nodded slightly. Mion's Watanagashi had ended today. I needed to tell Shion that I was safe without a moment's delay. After all, she was probably trembling in fear at this very moment, worrying about when she would be killed. The ostentatious door on the other side opened, revealing what must have been an incredibly expansive space based on the echo it made. Mion groped around in the darkness, and a handful of naked light bulbs came on here and there. As my eyes adjusted, more and more of the great cave showed itself in the faint light. The walls were bare rock surface, and it felt so savage that bomb shelter was the most apt term for it. There were small barred rooms built here and there, like holes made by insects biting their way through a giant piece of fruit. It was immediately clear that each one of them was a prison.
みんなはどこにいるんだ？リカちゃんやサトコは。
This is where she's like, you really don't want to see them.
したい？
I grimaced at her having said it so outright.
ああ、そうだ。いつまでも暗い中じゃかわいそうだろ。
虫が湧くと嫌だったから、井戸に捨てちゃったよ。ごめん。
Oh, that's... So I can't even see their faces in death. Once again, my feelings of regret at having confessed everything to Rika-chan came surging forth. And I really don't think that's what got her killed. Mion hadn't attached the word sorry to the end of what she said. I might have punched her. Calm down, Keichi Maebara. You said it yourself. No matter what, Mion Sonozaki is your greatest friend.
ああ、言ったさ。
I needed to hear myself say it out loud. Then came the clattering of bars in one of the cells deeper in. When I noticed it, I looked up as well.
シオンか。
ケイちゃんなの。
I ran over to the cell. White hands were peeking out through the gaps in the bars. It really was her.
大丈夫か、シオン。
Oh, well, I guess now that I think about it, there are two people down here. Oh, it could pretty easily just be Shion and Keiichi getting murked. I wouldn't be shocked if this doesn't end quite the way that they've, it doesn't quite end with Mion just walking to the police, right? Turning herself in. We'll see.
怪我はしていないのか？
Shion's face twisted out of shape as she screamed. It was because Mion had appeared right behind me. Of course, Shion didn't know that everything was over yet.
落ち着け、シオン。もう全部終わったんだ。全部。
I spoke in as calm a voice as I could manage to try and soothe the agitated Shion. However, it didn't seem like it was getting through her screams.
シオン、 ご機嫌はいかがだった？
もう誰の死を見るのも嫌。私が憎いなら早く私を殺してよ。憎いのは私なんでしょ。早く殺して
落ち着けってシオン、もう終わったんだよ。大丈夫なんだ。だから落ち着け。
Shion, who was screaming and rattling the iron bars back and forth, was truly in a frantic state. I gave a slight shrug of resignation, giving way to Mion. I had realized that if Mion was the one who locked her in here, and if Mion was the one who had scared Shion this much, then Mion was also the only one who could put an end to this. Mion spoke from over my shoulder, quietly.
安心しなよ。あんたは殺さない。まだまだ殺さないんだから。
Yeah, she's not gonna go out that easy. She burst out into a bizarre laugh, as if trying to make Shion's madness even worse. Shion broke out into a fierce shiver, brought on by that laugh, and rattled the iron bars as she wailed.
この男を殺した後にゆっくりとひき肉にしてやるよ。
Yeah, least surprising twist.
古式にのっとり、獅子の先端から少しずつガリゴリと削ってミンチにしてやる。あの肉引き器はあんたのために取っておいてやるんだからね。それともそれでケイちゃんをミンチにしてみせた方があんたには面白いかな。
おい、いい加減にしろ。今さら怖がらせてどうするんだよ。
I tried to rebuke Mion for flinging terrible words at her this late in the game, but when I turned around, Mion's mouth, so much so that it was hard to believe, had twisted into a shape even thinner than a crescent moon. It was a smile. I could sense it like a jolt of electricity. Yeah, I mean, turns out it's not a bright idea to, to go into the murder cave. Willingly. My face went. The person here wasn't my best friend Mion. It wasn't the Mion Sonozaki who had been tossed about by her heavy duty of succeeding the Sonozaki family either. Then, who was she? But bam! I saw sparks flying before my eyes, like what happens when you get hit in the back of the head. The strength of my body drained instantly. My head suddenly became heavy. My knees buckled under the temptation and hit the floor. Then my whole body abruptly collapsed. My face should have hit the floor, but it was comfortable. So if I had fallen onto a down-filled futon, it probably did. My consciousness reeled, then receded. It was the kind of sensation like if you took a nap in the car, but you were still half awake and could listen to your parents talking as if they were far away. No, you wouldn't be listening. You would only be hearing it. It was happening so far away. The conversation was completely unrelated to you, so you would have no interest in it. So whether Shion was yelling in my ears or Mion was in vulgar hysterics, I didn't think it annoying, nor did it interest me.
さて、どんな方法で料理してやろうかね。そうだ、釘台なんかどうかな。あのちびがき二人組に試したかったんだけど、手が小さくて高速台にサイズが合わなかったからね。あれにしよう、あれにしよう。
You know, seeing this play out, it's something. Wow, the bed of nails. Mion held me up from behind and dragged me across the floor. The soles of my feet scraped on it, and one of my shoes fell off. You know, I will admit that I was literally just the one who was like, as a player, I would like to kind of confirm everything, right? So Keiichi's it was definitely a terrible plan, and it always was, to follow her into an isolated forest where she had admitted everyone was, right? That was always a terrible plan, right? Probably ends in Keiichi's death now, right? That's tough. Maybe Oishi clutches? know. Maybe Oishi clutches his entire life, but I went into this kind of expecting Keiichi to get sacrificed. Right? And, it's looking likely. Shion's emotions exploded outward, and she burst into bitter weeping. As if her crying had whetted Mion's interest. She flung me down, and returned to the prison cell again. What is flung me down? I mean...
あんたも可愛い声で泣けるじゃない。あんたのわざとらしい空威張りには虫唾が走ってたんだけど、やっぱりそういうあんたが一番似合ってるよ。ミオン姉さん、お願いです。私をどういう風に殺しても構いませんから。どうか、ケイちゃんだけは見逃してあげてください。お願いです。
Shion had always acted as though she were a cut above her older sister. That's Shion. In such a miserable voice that I couldn't have imagined it during those peaceful times. Prostrated herself before the older sister she used to scoff at and pleaded forgiveness. Mion looked down with an expression of cool indifference, one that was plainly smiling with joy.
あんたの希望なんか聞くつもりは全然なかったんだけど、あんたがあまりにも面白い声で泣くものだから、なんだか聞いててやってもいいような気がしてきたかな。思えばあんたには姉らしいこと、何にもしてやれなかったからね。はい、ありがとうございます。ありがとうございます。じゃあさ、これまでのことを謝ってみせてよ。そうしたら私もこれまでのことをすっかり水に流してあげてもいいかな。そうしたらケイちゃんだけは見逃してあげなくもないよ。
She won't. Mion said she might let me go, but she never said anything about letting Shion go. Well, yeah, I think Shion understands that much. I don't know. Maybe there's a small chance that this is just different, like different personalities type deal, and we get the normal Mion back for like a little bit, and we escape. I kind of think she's just been acting, right? Really wouldn't shock me. Before long, Shion got on her hands and knees behind the bars and began to speak weak words of apology. They were too faint for me to hear. Their intention got across. Despite having watched her with a magnificently jubilant expression, Mion kicked the bars and declared she was unsatisfied.
そんなので私の積年の恨みつらみが償えると思ってるわけ？こんなんじゃダメだね。やっぱりケイちゃんからひき肉だ。いやー！待って姉様！もう一度だけ。
Mion stopped and waved her hand again in resignation, not because she had grown impatient, but only because she was taking delight in abusing Shion.
ろくろく満足に謝れないあんただからね。特別にお姉が心に届く謝罪の仕方ってのを教えてあげるよ。一度しか教えないし、一言一句でも間違えたら会う。いいね。はい、ありがとうございます。お姉さん。
Shion's miserable voice cried out, having become utterly hoarse. The sensation tearing through my chest returned a little at a time. I realized those feelings of anger bubbling up. I was slowly regaining control of my body. You're probably in a cell. However, I was only able to feel my skin and my blood flowing at the moment. I still couldn't voluntarily move my fingers.
ちゃんと覚えられたかな？ではやってごらん。誠心誠意、鉄頭鉄尾、心を込めてね。ちゃんとできたなら、あんただけを殺してあげるから。はい。ありがとうございます。ありがとうございます。
Something was strange. Something had become strange at some point. Until just a few moments ago, I was sure this had been Mion, but at some point, she had become someone else. The Mion I knew well would never do something so nasty like enjoy trampling all over someone's dignity like this. The Mion that you knew so well murdered lots of people. Methinks you did not know Mion quite as well as you thought you did, and you just played right into her trap.
さ、やってごらん。お姉ちゃんはちゃんと聞いててあげるから。Sonozaki Shion は。
When I ran over to Shion's cell earlier, had the real thing been swapped out with a fake right behind me? Anyway, this couldn't possibly be Mion.
Sonozaki Shion はミオン姉様の 足元にも及ばない景色のほどをわきまえず、蓮様に働いた数々のプレーを
This is hard to sit through.
思います。ほらほら、その調子。少しは許してあげようかなって気になってきたよ。
Blood circulated through my whole body. My numbed senses were returning. Just a little more. While Shion is still holding Mion's, no, the thing pretending to be Mion's attention. Hurry up!
生意気だったこれまでを反省し、一生ミオン姉様に忠誠を誓います。
I mean, making someone do this is just so unbelievably cruel. Oh my goodness. Did she forget? Uh-oh, GG. Mion's burst of laughter echoed throughout the big cave, growing to a terrifying level. That was not the laugh of someone who was alive in this world. It was none other than the laugh of a demon from the bowels of the earth. She laughed from her stomach until she grew tired of it, and stopped smiling suddenly as if snipping a wire.
いいよ、もう十分面白かったわ。あんたがそこまでプライドを捨てられるとは思わなかったから。うんうん、十分に愉快。
Mion began to drag me again after I finally got the feeling in my body back and pulled me towards the torture chamber.
姉様、殺すのは私だけ。その人許してあげ。安心しなって。ちゃんとあんたは殺してあげるよ。ケイちゃんの悲鳴をたっぷりと聞かせた後にね。
After dragging me to the torture chamber, she skillfully strapped me into the restraining table. Before I knew it, I was sprawled out and bound. She forced open my hands, with which I couldn't even make a satisfying fist, and tightly restrained each one of my fingers. She fastened only my hands, and my fingers at that, tightly with hinges and locked them in place. Yeah, I mean, I guess this is what, you know, she couldn't just not figure out what to do, right? Like when it came to killing Shion. I think she always knew what she wanted to do. And that was to kill Keiichi right in front of her. The door to the big cave with the jails had been left open, so I could hear Shion's cries of mortification the entire time.
聞こえるかい、シオン。これから始めるよ。ケイちゃんの若い悲鳴をたっぷりと楽しみな。
いい加減にしろ。
The feeling in my body returned, and the first action I took was to tell off that thing that looked like Mion.
ようやくお目覚め。私、さっき嘘をついたね。シオンを一番むごたらしく殺してやろうと思って閉じ込めておいたけど。
Yeah.
まだ思いつかないって言ったやつ。あれが嘘。
She always knew. Mion brought over something like a toolbox. From inside it, she removed a large metal hammer, and next to that, she began to line up what looked like long, strangely shaped nails, whose ends had been turned into hooks like the kind you'd see on a harpoon.
あの子に自分のせいで死ぬ大勢の人の悲鳴をたっぷりと聞かせて、体の芯まで染み通らせてから殺すの。なかなかセンスいいでしょ？
Great taste. Immaculate.
お前は誰だ？
は？ミオンでしょ？園崎ミオン。恐怖で頭が変になっちゃった？
違うな。お前が園崎ミオンであるはずがない。
Mion snorted and continued her preparations for the horrifying torture.
へえ、じゃあ私がミオンじゃなかったら私は誰なわけ？
鬼だ。
え？
お前はミオンじゃない。さっきまで一緒だったミオンを返せ。
ケイちゃん、本当に頭は大丈夫？恐怖で頭がどうかなっちゃった？
触るな！この鬼め！返せ！ミオンを返せよ！俺の最高の友人だったミオンを返せ！
Mion stood there for a few moments with her jaw hanging open, not having expected me to say that. I myself knew that I was about to go insane. I knew it was nonsense to demand Mion's return when she was right in front of me. But, this person in front of me couldn't possibly have been Mion. There's no way I could accept that. So, this is what I thought. Mion really had been possessed by a demon. It was controlling Mion as if it were a separate personality. Mion was just a victim being manipulated by it. The evil one was really this thing. It all had to be the doing of this demon possessing her. Bro had a little too much faith. When Mion heard that, she started to guffaw, laughing so hysterically that she started to cough and almost choked.
あんたって本当におめでたい人だね。園崎美音に殺されようとしているこの瞬間に目の前の私を否定するわけ？こんな面白い人が世の中にいるなんて初めて知ったわ。
笑いたければ好きなだけ笑え。だがお前が何を言おうと俺はお前がミオンだなんて認めない。ミオンを返せ。退け鬼め。
ケイちゃん、私を笑い涙で溺れ殺すつもり？
I guess so. No matter what, I wouldn't lose to that laughter of hers. I shouted loudly, shouted from the bottom of my heart, so that the real Mion, trapped inside the Mion I saw in front of me, would be able to hear.
頑張れミオン。こんな鬼畜生に負けるな。本当に強い。お前の力を見せてくれ。
The tears welled up and flooded down her face. Her hands were busy with restraints, so she couldn't even wipe them. She just let them flow.
頼むよミオン。ミオン。どこでお前はこんな鬼に負けちまったんだ。お前はこんな弱いやつじゃないだろう。
Ooh, the goading too?
負けるな。戦え。戦え。
Mion, desperately enduring her laughter, pressed one of the long nails to the tip of my left pinky. In her left hand was the hammer. At her side were dozens more nails. I could tell what she was about to do, though I wish I couldn't. Even so, I couldn't afford to be scared. That was why I shouted.
お腹の筋肉がよじれて痛いよ。もういい？そろそろ始めるよ。いい声を出してね。これはケイちゃんへの拷問である以上にシオンへの拷問なんだからさ。
どうしてこんなことに。ミオン。
Then, I wept. Only sobs came out. They weren't an acceptance of the torture about to be performed, however. They were tears of regret that Mion had lost to the demon. Yet a small change did occur in the Mion in front of me. Her heightened excitement was draining, little by little. By the time I'd realized it, the one in front of me had returned to being Mion.
ケイちゃん、メイドの土産なんて気の利いたものじゃないけれど、どうしても知りたがっているようだから、一つだけ教えてあげるよ。
I didn't know if this was Mion or just a display of momentary humanity the demon had recovered.
私の中に鬼が宿ったのは、その鬼は私を蝕み、強行に駆り立てようとした。だけれど私は、それを理性で押さえつけた。鬼はそれで収まり、私はその鬼はどこかへ行ってしまったんだと思い込んでいた。でも、本当は違った。私の中から出て行ったんじゃなく、私の中で眠っていただけだったの。
I noticed that there were tears forming in her eyes.
その鬼は、ある小さなことをきっかけに、また目覚めてしまった。それは、何に原因があったと思う？
There was a sad and yet reproachful light in Mion's eyes.
わかる？
I don't know. What gave the demon the chance to beat Mion? I'm gonna guess the way they're trying to go with this is that it was him. Right? I don't know, but the thing is, if she has been involved in the murders before this year, there's no way that it was just Keiichi, right? So I don't know.
鬼の私が教えるのも変だけれど、あんたが全てを狂わせてしまった元凶。
Never mind, that is where they're going with this. Alright. The tears welling up in her eyes spilled downward all of a sudden.
あの時、あんたがもらった人形を躊躇なく私に渡していたなら、全ては狂い出さなかったかもしれない。
Yeah, I was gonna say it. Probably did not leave her in a great mental state, and that's kind of one of the things I've been thinking for a while. I mean, I didn't think she'd go full, like, murder mode necessarily. Because of it, I didn't expect this as a result of that necessarily, but I had a feeling it would have some kind of lasting implication. And I mean, in Higurashi, I can't say I'm surprised it ended like this. The doll I got. That doll that I got when we had our club meeting at the toy store that Sunday.
ケイちゃんには理解できないだろうね。理解できなくて当然。だけどね、そこからドミノ倒しみたいに、パタパタパタと、いろんなものが倒れ始めて、
Is this where he
収集が
apologizes?
つかなくなってしまった。
Wouldn't be shocked if he apologizes for it and then still gets murdered anyways.
はじめの小さな一つを倒したあなたに自覚がないのは当然だろうけど、あなたが元凶なの。
そんな、俺が。
あんたがミオンを泣かさなかったら、私は起きなくて済んだのにね。これで十分？メイドの土産は。
A mistake that I'd made on that day was what messed everything up?
そんな、嘘だろ。
自覚がないのは当然。でも、紛れもなく元凶なのはケイちゃん。あの時、あんたがさりげなく人形を私にあげていたら、多分こんなことにはならなかったと思う。
I wanted to say, like I just remembered something, as I recalled that day, and had told me about that, and I thought I had apologized. I didn't apologize to Mion, though. It had been Shion. In other words, oh god, I hadn't said a single word of apology to Mion. Today I came to this house, saying I had something to apologize for. I never said a word of apology about this. Come to think of it, when I apologized for going into the ritual storehouse, Mion looked a little bit lonely, like she was disappointed. I'm not gonna lie, I did kind of think that was... Well, I did think he was going to apologize for that while he was here, so I was a little shocked that he didn't start with that. Yeah. I guess that's what happened as a result, though. I guess all this. Why didn't I realize that until just now? Rena told me at the time, and now she, herself. No. The demon was telling me. Is the only way for a dense idiot like me to be cured? Die altogether? I could no longer hold back the hot tears from pouring out of me. I simply just cried and reflected indifferently on the taste of my tears, on the taste of regret.
じゃあそろそろいい？この拷問はね、左手の小指の先端の節に釘を打つ。順に親指まで打ったらまた小指に戻って、今度は真ん中の節に釘を打つ。この調子で15本の釘で左手を打ちつける。
That would hurt a little bit.
それが終わったら次は右手。それが終わったら次は、まだ意識があったら教えるね。指先ってたくさんの神経が集まってるから、ケイちゃんが想像するよりもはるかに痛いよ。両手30本を打ち終える前に失神しちゃう人もいるそうだから。
Mion pressed the tip of a nail to my left pinky finger. My wrists, my arms, and all the joints on my fingers were strapped in so tightly it hurt, and I couldn't even twitch.
他の人を拷問するときには何のためらいもなかったけど、なぜかあんたにはためらいがあるよ。
それでミオンの鬼が収まるなら。
It will sate the demon, and do to me what you will.
あんた、本気で言ってるの？
You didn't expect that response.
俺が傷つけたミオンの痛みに比べれば、こんなの大したことないんだろ。気の済むようにするといい。その代わり、2つ約束しろ。
Mion was silent. She did, however, wait for me to speak.
俺を気が済むまで痛めつけたら、シオンは許してやれ。西宮殿に忍び込んだ罪には。それで十分見合う仕打ちをしたはずだ。
あんた、この後に及んで、自分よりシオンの心配ができるわけ？
That is kind of crazy. I don't know how many people could do that in this situation.
もう一つは、気が済んだら、もうお前は消えろ。
It's gonna be Keiichi and Mion. Oh, man.
その体を、ミオンに返してやってくれ。
Oh, that's okay. That's the angle he's
それ
playing.
だけだ。
あんたって人には、命乞いをするとか、そういう考えは思い浮かばないの？
Nah.
約束。2つじゃなくて、3つ目は、俺を殺すなにしてくれ。
I said, I mean, I guess if you want me to.
最初に2つって言ったでしょ？だからもうダメ。
そいつは残念。
In such an abnormal situation, Mion and I laughed quietly together, as if sharing in a stupid joke.
多分、私は約束を守らないよ。鬼だから。
その時は仕方がないさ。
I recalled tightening my hands into fists when enduring the pain at the dentist's office. Right now, though, they were opened all the way to my fingertips, so I couldn't even grip them. So instead, I tightened my toes. I was just gonna tank it. Okay. Do it. I've prepared myself already, so do it. You waiting like this to hammer the nails in is scarier. It's going to diminish my readiness after all. Mio put down the hammer and gently stroked my cheek.
ケイちゃん、今の3つ目の願いだけは。
My third wish. To save me. She'll agree to it?
1つ目の願い。シオンを救うこと。これはもう無理。シオンは鬼が殺してしまう。それはもう決められたことだから止められない。だから諦めて。
Her delicate fingers slid from my cheek to my chin.
そして2つ目の願い。この体をミオンに返すこと。これももう無理。今日を境に、ミオンが戻ってくることはもうない。今日以降、もし私の姿があったとしても、それは姿だけ。私の姿をした鬼だから。
そんなことはない。ミオンは、ミオンだ。もう戻ってこないなんて、悲しいことを言うな。
聞こえる？あの音。
Mio gently closed her eyes and listened. I definitely heard it as well. Slam. Slam. It was a dull noise that repeated at fixed intervals, a low noise accompanied by vibrations. A lot of people were ramming the iron doors to this underground ritual storehouse.
帰りが遅いから、レナが大石を呼んだんでしょ。あのぼやーっとした感じの子が、こんなに頭が回るのだけは計算外だったな。
Yeah, that's
それ
fair.
については同感だよ。
Mio grinned like she'd been outwitted and took something that looked like an electric razor out of her pocket. When she pressed the switch, pale blue sparks flew out with a snapping
見
noise.
たことないでしょ？本物のスタンガンだよ。違法品なんで、かなり出力が上げられるようになってるけどね。
さっき、俺に食らわせたのはそれか。子供のおもちゃには向かねえぞ。
そうだね。
She seemed to want to use the stun gun on me. Unable to move, I felt her press the cool lump of metal to my neck. Slam. I heard a roar as though they'd broken down the first large door. The halls were a bit complex, but aside from the door to this very torture chamber, there was nothing in their way.
殺さないけど、しばらくケイちゃんにはお休みしててもらうね。すぐに大石が来てくれるから。
Yeah.
ちょっとの我慢。
Feeling the same shock as before, gritting my teeth wasn't going to help much, but I clenched them tightly anyway. However, just as she did when she was about to hammer the nails in, she hesitated a little. I cracked open my tightly closed eyelids.
ごめんね。ミオンを怪我して。
ここに入る前に約束した。何があっても、俺の中のミオンは変わらない。
Dang, he's still like steadfast about this. This is, I mean, that's crazy. How many people would be able to, in the face of all of this, keep their wits about them, right? Not many.
でも忘れて。今日以降、もしも私を見かけても、それは私の屍に取り付いた鬼なんだから。
What are you talking about? Just as I tried to say that, a much stronger light than before shined, like a television being switched off. My consciousness went black. That can be the end of the chapter. Might get a little epilogue. June 1983. A string of disappearances occurred in Hinamizawa Village, Shishibone City, XX Prefecture. The suspect is Mion Sonozaki, 1x years old. She's suspected to have kidnapped 5 Hinamizawa residents between June 19th and June 21st, Oryu Sonozaki, Shion Sonozaki, Kichiro Kimiyoshi, Rika Furude, and Satoko Hojo, imprisoned them, and killed them. Preliminary investigations on the incident were delayed at the time due to insufficient evidence, but it resolved coincidentally and shockingly. On the morning of the 23rd, a vehicle patrolling the Sonozaki property heard screams from inside and rushed in as an emergency measure. They secured the suspect's missing younger sister, Shion Sonozaki, and her 2 missing classmates, Keichi Maebara and Rene Ryugu. The suspect fled the scene. What? Deep in the detached basement on the Sonozaki property, which is believed to have been used to kill those who disappeared, we discovered hair, flakes of skin, blood, etc. of the other 4 missing persons, Oryu Sonozaki, Kichiro Kimiyoshi, Rika Furude, and Satoko Hojo. Okay. I didn't exactly react to this the first time I saw this, now that I think about it. But obviously they mentioned Oryu there, which isn't shocking. I had a feeling that she was also missing. It says absolutely nothing about Tomatake or Takano, though. Just gonna keep that in mind. We concluded that the missing persons were tortured in the torture chamber. However, the remains have still not been found. At one of our imprisoned classmates' advice, we continued searching the detached basement of the Sonozaki property, which was where they were imprisoned, believing that they were there. However, we still have not located them or the suspect's escape route. In addition, investigations are continuing as to her participation in the serial freak death incidents of recent years, thinking it would give some clue. But no evidence that Mion Sonozaki was involved, either directly or indirectly, has been found. There are still many unclear points as to the motive behind the incident, and as those of the Sonozaki family and the residents of Hinamizawa have been extremely uncooperative in assisting us, we expect to require a long time to clarify them. The opinion of a local officer knowledgeable about the region is that this may have been a lynching, an internal form of punishing sacrilegious acts carried out against the beliefs of Hinamizawa village. I mean, that roughly checks out. Not completely, though. If she wasn't the one who killed Tomatake and Takano. It is clear that these incidents are particularly rooted in this region, and the prefectural police department has ordered a cautious investigation. We anticipated gaining valuable clues from the missing person believed to have been in prison for the longest time, Shion Sonozaki, the suspect's younger sister, but her mind was stricken by the grave after effects of the incident. She has not been in a state of mind to properly answer any questions about what she knows. The psychiatrist concluded that she's in a temporary state of shock, but it doesn't seem hopeful that she will recover today either. Only a few days passed since that time. After that, I was rescued by Oishi-san and his subordinates, whom Ren had called in. Aside from my entirely blank state of mind, I had no external injuries. The most I had was the small burn mark from where the stun gun hit me. So I was having a checkup in the hospital. Oishi-san asked me all sorts of things. I don't really remember what he asked or how I answered him. From what I heard, surprisingly, Mion still hadn't been captured. Yeah, I'm guessing those tunnels were a lot more elaborate than anyone had initially anticipated. There were apparently a great many hallways and smaller rooms extending out from the depths of the prison. It wouldn't be strange if she had fled to one of those and hidden herself. The one fortunate aspect amidst all the misfortune was that Shion had been safely secured by the police. When I last saw Mion, it seemed like she was going to take me with her and then kill me. She probably didn't have enough time to, though, since Oishi-san came running in faster than she predicted. That was the only really fortunate thing to have happened. Of course, the rescued Shion, despite having no external wounds, now had a big, deep wound in her heart. She was in a severe state of confusion when they rescued her, and apparently she bit the police officers trying to resist. From what she heard, she was seeing Mion in everyone she saw. Hated not only the hospital, but even her own home, and had shut herself up somewhere in Shishibone, hiding her location. Additionally, in fear that Mion would come for her, she was moving from place to place every day, and even her parents weren't sure where she actually was. Wherever she was living, even now, she was spending her days in fear of Mion's shadow. That's probably valid. The police were investigating the Sonozaki's underground storehouse at this moment, since they couldn't find the remains of the other sacrifices. Hadn't Mion thrown the corpses into a well? I had a feeling I'd said that to him. That meant a hidden tunnel, vertical like a well, was somewhere in those underground passages, the secret underground, without any maps or architectural drawings, which had swallowed up the remains of Rika-chan, Satoko, and everyone else was still unwilling to speak the truth. I don't know. She could have meant like the Hinamizawa well. I was brought back to that basement again, too, for an on-the-site inspection or something, but I didn't remember being of any help. I never wanted to go back there again. Yeah, no kidding. For days afterwards, the Sonozakis living in Okinomiya, in other words, Mion and Shion's parents, the big-name Yakuza, would come to our house to apologize, bringing many of their followers with them. However much my parents refused it, they piled up many 100,000 yen bills, calling it consolation money every day. I might have taken it. The amount of money grew each day, and after it passed 2 million yen, they were given an envelope containing a letter. I don't know what was written in the letter. My parents talked about it by themselves for 2 whole nights, and decided to move away. It was probably a threat. You're probably getting hush money, and then they refused it.
そっか。引っ越しちゃうんだね。いつ？
来月の終わり。ひなみ沢には結局半年も居つかなかったことになるな。
寂しくなるね。
Yeah, poor Rena, actually.
私一人しか残らない。
Rena smiled sadly. If I had just said, yeah, I thought it would make her even more lonely, so I changed the subject.
こう考えることがあるんだ。
That's how I broached it. Mion hadn't actually fled, but had been demoned away in the truest sense of the term. Where she went after she disappeared, that we didn't know. What was there? Where she had disappeared to? I hoped there was a hobby shop dealing in imports, the kind Mion liked. In that place, she would definitely be free from the burdensome fetters of her family. Live not as Mion Sonozaki, but as just Mion, and enjoy herself. Maybe she's already met up with Satoko and Rika-chan. They must also have been waiting for the day Rena and I would join them, spending all their time doing club activities, as lively as they always were. That's such a depressing thought. When I told Rena that, she smiled and nodded to me. The incidents the Sonozaki family had been trying so hard to hide, too, were exposed to the magazines from this single tiny seam. The serial incidents of recent years were all pulled up like a long vine in the ground, one by one. For many days, news of it was brought up on talk and variety shows. The shows, which were comedic and silly, never once tried to touch upon the grim, heavy history that Mion had been bearing. It made me mad to see them bringing this stuff up in jest. There was nothing I could do about it now. How big an impression would these short few weeks I spent in Hinamizawa have on my life? A lot? Your best friend murdered several of your other best friends, and then tried to kill you. I think most people bear that for life. During these few weeks, I met my best friends, and had the best experiences of my life. I would probably never forget it for as long as I lived. As for the distorted image of Mion that the media created, after the masses got tired of treating her like a plaything, they would ball her up, throw her in the trash, and then she would fade from their memories. As one of the few people who knew the real Mion, I must always make sure I remember her. Beyond any doubt, that will surely become my offering to her. The sky reached so far up, and towering cumulonimbus clouds floated through it. The real summer was just before our eyes. Oh, it's not over. Even now, whenever 10 p.m. came around, I would expect a phone call from Mion, rather. Now that everything was over, of course, she would never call me. But it was precisely because she wouldn't call me that I was scared of who would call me this time. Plus, Mion still hadn't been caught. I couldn't say for sure that everything was completely over. On the other side of that fear, though, were my prayers that Mion was safe. When I thought like that, I was able to sleep, even with such terrifying thoughts. The lights were off. Before, her attacking when the lights were off was something that scared me. However, that feeling changed to regret within 2 days. The moonlight filtering through the gap in the curtain shone onto the desk and illuminated a doll. That's right, the doll that I should have given to Mion that day. She said it was an import from England or something, and was all the rage, didn't she? From what Shion said, the most popular among them were the ones wearing the fluffy dress. After being released from the incident, the first place I went to was that toy store. Everything was apparently sold out besides the things on the storefront displays. I was refused once when they said they wouldn't sell the display products, but when they realized I was Survivor A from that incident, they immediately consented. Of course, even if I bought it, I might never have the chance to give it to her again. Even knowing that, I waited for the opportunity to give it to her. I feel like she's going to show up. I waited like this for the opportunity with it on the desk so I could give it to her at any time. Plonk. There was a weird noise. It was a noise I wasn't used to hearing. It was too big to be raindrops, and it was completely different from the sound lost bugs make when they ram into fluorescent lights. I figured I must have misheard and nestled back into my futon. Plonk. The noise happened again. I wasn't hearing things. I definitely heard it. Someone's at your window. Where was it coming from? I got up and turned on the light. There was a second. There would be a third. From where, though? I listened carefully. Plonk. The window. Some sort of pebbles were colliding with my window. I realized they weren't being blown there by the wind, but rather being thrown by a person. I gave a start. I looked at the clock. It was 2 a.m. Who would it be? At a time like this, I quietly peeked out front, through the gap in the curtains. In the light of the gate, despite it being so late, I saw someone. They picked up a piece of gravel and threw it at this window. It hit the window and made a plonking noise. Who was it? I caught my breath in surprise. My eyes weren't deceiving me. That person was Mion. I threw open the window and looked at the figure again. My eyes certainly weren't deceiving me. It was Mion. It was Mion. She was alive. Mion pressed her index finger to her lips and made a shh motion so I wouldn't shout. If she hadn't, well, I was nearly about to cry out. Mion was in a very delicate position right now. Even if it was the middle of the night, I shouldn't call out her name. I waved to her, gesturing that I'd be right over, flung on my coat atop my pajamas, and flew out the door. This is bold. I quickly hit the brakes just before going down the stairs. Although happiness was sprouting within me, I had this sad feeling that this would be our final parting. So I went back to my room again and grabbed the doll. If there was a God, I don't think I would have ever thanked him as much as today. Even if it would be the last time we ever saw each other, I was so grateful for this one chance to give it to her. I slipped into my sandals, unlocked the door, unhooked the chain, and leaped out of the house.
Mion!
お久しぶり。どう？元気にしてた？
It was like how we used to meet every morning. Mion waved to me and responded like she always did. It was doubtlessly Mion. was the real Mion.
お前、こんなところをうろついてて、大丈夫なのか？
本当はいけないよ。
She certainly wasn't acting like she knew the police were following her. It was almost like she was a patient who had gotten tired of staying in the hospital and had snuck out. Her speech was relaxed enough to make me think that. I couldn't help but be surprised. That relaxation, I thought, was more like Mion. I was happy for it.
それより、どうしたんだよ、こんな時間に。
最後にお話ししたかったから。
Yeah, I think he kind of already had that impression. That was when I noticed them. On Mion's forehead were big droplets of sweat. Her expression, too, which I thought to be a satisfied smile, was, upon closer inspection, trembling slightly, and I realized that she was forcing it.
私ね。もう、ここにはいられない。
A painted note was beginning to enter her words as well. A pained note was beginning to enter her words as well. As if just smiling was a feat for her.
大丈夫か？どこか具合でも。
Man, she probably wants to kill you.
今日まで頑張ってきたけど自分でもわかるの。もうダメ。もう限界。私のお迎えはもうすぐ後ろまで来てる。
Mion's smile crumbled and started to stiffen. Did she push herself this much to come all this way for me? Her laughter cut off and changed into rough breathing. I reached out to rub her back, but she knocked me
大
away.
丈夫かよ。
Whoops.
もう無理するな。そうだ。俺、ミオンに。
To give you, Mion, this doll. I'd wanted to do this one last thing, because I knew how little time you had left. This last thing, it... oh, yeah, he's dead. Gah. My stomach is burning. Mion took a meat cleaver-like knife and stabbed me, and pushed it in tight and took it and twisted it. Mion? Hey, what? It hurts. You know, she did explicitly tell you not to interact with her again. I cowered on the ground. My stomach was so hot, it was almost spewing fire. Mion watched it, then took a few steps back and cackled. Yeah, so she got Shion too. The last words Mion left me with that day came back to me.
今日を境にミオンが戻ってくることはもうない。
Yeah, you were holding out hope for someone who was not coming back. From today on, even if my body is here, a body is all it will be. By then, the demon will have taken it over. The demon. The demon.
ミオン。
This can't. I thought we had finally been able to meet. This can't. Mion. In a pool of blood of my own design, is the doll I bought from Mion, dyed in red. So red. Mion. The good fortune of having been allowed to meet Mion once more, and the misfortune of that meeting being torn apart before my eyes. Should I be grateful or curse it? My emotions were neither of those, as my consciousness sunk deep into a black swamp. The doll I bought from Mion, the blood, had ruined it. No matter how much I scrubbed and scrubbed, it had needlessly been ruined. The sad moon was so white it looked frozen. That's gotta be the actual end now. June 28th, 1983. A violent incident occurred in Hinamizawa Village, Shishibone City, XX Prefecture. The victim was Keichi Maebara, also a victim of the previous string of disappearances. At around 2 a.m., he was stabbed in the stomach with a bladed object by the suspect of the last case, Sonozaki, and was gravely wounded. He was discovered when his parents woke up and was then transported to the clinic. He escaped death. He lived? The criminal fled the scene. On the same day, at approximately the same time, a fall accident occurred in the Kamishiki apartment complex in Shishibone City, XX Prefecture. The victim was Sonozaki, also a victim of the previous string of disappearances. Late on the same night, neighbors overheard her having a big fight with someone and informed the manager. The manager used a master key to enter the room and discovered that the victim had fallen from her 8th floor balcony to her death. The room had been torn apart and appeared to show traces of a fight. One neighbor has frequently visited the Sonozaki house for a long time and testified that he heard what sounded just like the two sisters having a fight, trading insults back and forth. We believe this was related to the injury case that occurred the same day in Hinamizawa Village, perpetrated by said incident suspect. We did a thorough search of the room, but we could not find any traces that would imply that anyone but the victim was present. The victim fell straight down into the foliage of a parking strip. Her neck broke and she died immediately. Her clothing was disheveled and had markings that would imply a scuffle. We also believe, however, that it could have been an insanity-induced suicide attempt, based on the particular mental state of the victim after the incident. We're conducting a thorough examination on both fronts, suicide and homicide. Interesting. So they said it was roughly the same time, right? So, I mean, I guess she could have booked it that far. It wouldn't really shock me. Still not dead. I cannot believe he got stabbed by a meat cleaver and it was twisted. She twisted it. She didn't just stab him. She twisted it. Right? And he said, I tank those. We'll see if he stays alive, but...
刺激しないようにしてください。心得ていますよ。
Ka-clack. The door opened, and as I expected, Oishi-san came in.
どうも前原さん。
That's good.
ご無沙汰しておりますね。
Those it has.
その後、お加減はいかがですか？
医者が言うには術後の回復は順調だそうですが、あんたの顔を見たらまた傷が悪くなりそうです。
I think I got worse when I saw your face. Unlucky.
こりゃ手厳しい。
As Oishi-san gave a laugh that smelled of sweat, he handed Mom a bag of assorted candies he must have purchased from the souvenir corner on the first floor of the hospital.
すみません、お母さん。ほんのしばらく圭一君とお話しする時間をいただいてもよろしいですか？
Mom clearly wasn't pleased at the thought of a police officer talking to her son without her there. However, I insisted.
母さん、悪いけど、ほんのちょっとだけ、5分でいいから。
Though grudgingly, Mom left the room. When she closed the door, Oishi-san grinned wide and he looked around the room.
個室なんていい身分ですね。
Yeah?
うちのばあさまなんかいっつも相部屋ですよ。そりゃもう賑やかなことで、ああいうところじゃ病気の重さが一つのステータスになるらしいんですよ。
That's such a... I've never really thought about that, but that's so messed up that, like, those who have the worst disease or injury or wound, whatever, right, are like top of the totem pole.
より重病な患者ほど偉いというか、威張っているというか。
Such a weird thought. I don't really know how true it rings in most hospitals, like genuinely, but...
大石さん、5分ですよ。できれば、これが本当に最後の5分にしてほしいものです。俺はもうひなみ沢とは関係ないし、ここももうひなみ沢じゃない。
沖宮には総合病院はありませんからね。椅子よろしいですかな。ゆっくらしゅっと。
This was a large university hospital in Shishibone City. It was splendidly urban, entirely different from the likes of Hinamizawa and Okinomiya. It was hard to believe Hinamizawa was part of the same city.
転院はいつ頃になりそうですか？
さあ、俺的にはいつでも OK なんですけどね。
Our moving plans were delayed a little because of my serious injury. My parents had already left the house in Hinamizawa, though, and were living in our new one. They planned to have me transfer hospitals to be closer to the new house once I'd recovered enough to be taken there.
転院先にまで来ないでくださいよ。本当に具合が悪くなりますからね。
いや、すっかり嫌われちゃいました。 仕事柄とはいえ心苦しいですよ。なので今日はこれまでの罪滅ぼしに素敵なお土産をいろいろお持ちしましたので。
別にクッキーの詰め合わせなんか持ってこなくても。
それがね、実は中身はクッキーじゃないんですよ。ほら。
Oishi-san pulls open the can of cookies and what? Ow, I'm stretching my scar.
前原さんの好みがわからなかったので、いろいろと持ってきましたよ。ほら、よりどりみどり、野原は黄緑ってなもんです。さあさあ、好きなだけ持っていっちゃってください。
Yo.
こんな本なんか持ってこないでください。持って帰って持って帰って。いってててててて。
Oishi-san is quite a dude.
健全な若者がこんなところにずーっと閉じ込められてたら、こんなところにいると看護師フェチにしかなりませんよ。
Yo.
世の中には看護師さん以外にも素晴らしいものがいっぱいあるんですからね。
You are the strangest person.
今から専門を決めないと幅広く。
Don't decide what to major in now. Keep your options open. That's one of the most insane lines I've ever seen with context.
オールラウンドに行かなくっちゃ。
Dude. Oishi-san is so wild. I gave Oishi-san's vulgar laughter a pained grin. Somehow or other, I understood. The fact that Oishi-san was bringing it up like this meant that he must have had something important to talk about. Then let's talk about it.
シオンさんの件は本当にお気の毒でした。
The night I was stabbed by Mion, Shion fell from her balcony and died. They said the police were investigating all possibilities: accident, suicide, and homicide. But it could only have been Mion's doing. Mion found out where Shion was hiding, pushed her down to her death. Nothing else was conceivable.
事故のわけない。ミオンです。絶対に。
鑑識の連中は自殺だとしか思えないなんて言ってるんですが、シオンさんを突き落とし、一晩のうちにね。
Kind of
ミオンは
impressive.
まだ見つからないんですか？
I mean, we literally saw that she, sweating. She was clearly booking it.
そうそう。それを今日はお伝えしたくて来たんですよ。はい。実は、見つかったんです。
Really?
あ、て。
Learning that felt rather strange to me. I was partly relieved that the incident was truly over. I was partly sorry that my best friend had been finally caught. I felt many other things too. My heart was a maze of emotions.
それだけじゃない。園崎家の例の地下、隠し井戸も見つかったんですよ。
Oh, you did find it.
前原さんがおっしゃられてた通り、失踪者全員の遺体を
But was it
そ
only
の
those?
底で発見しました。
Was it only those four?
そうですか。
That sliver of hope, that possibility I'd believed in, that Rika-chan and Satoko were alive, just from the fact that the remains hadn't been found. Gone.
あの地下に実に巧妙に隠されてましてね。いやいや、まさに死角中の死角でした。井戸状に掘られた垂直トンネルでして、はしごが設けてあって、下へずーっと行ったところに、今度は横へ抜けるトンネルが作られていました。
Wild.
そこを数百メートルも張って進むと、なんと山中の古井戸に抜けられましたね。
過去の園崎家の当主が作らせた秘密の逃げ道だったんでしょうね。
Probably.
でしょうな。明治以降に作ったものでしょうが。
What mountains? That's worth noting. As if it was, I wonder if it was the mountains where Akano was found.
いやいや、よくもあんなものを作ったもんです。
みんなの遺体はその底に。
はい。逃げ道の通路よりもさらに下に、コルタール状の泥水が溜まってまして、そこに無造作に投げ込まれていました。
Yep.
相当の高さから落としたわけですから、遺体はどっぷりと埋まってしまってましてね。遺体の引き上げにはだいぶ苦労させられました。
全員見つかりましたか？
I hoped they at least wouldn't find Rika-chan or Satoko. That's what I wished for when I asked. But my shallow hope was crushed in the blink of an eye.
はい、全員。それどころか、死後10年以上経過したと思われる人骨も見つかりました。
Interesting.
最低でも3人分はあると思われます。
Decade old.
ひなみ沢の歴史の暗部というわけでしょうな。泥を全部吸い出したら、一体何人分の骨が出てくるやら。怖い話です。
A weight had been pushing down on Mion's shoulders the whole time. Mion.
今、鹿骨市内の過去数十年の失踪者を洗い直しているところです。諦められてた失踪事件も、これを機に全部解決するんじゃないか。
What does he
なんて
think?
言われてますよ。
Does he think they're actually related, or does he think it's actually kind of not related? After a deep silence, he breathed a heavy sigh. Oishi-san went for his cigarettes to pass the time, but realized this was a non-smoking area, so he gave up and put them back in his shirt pocket.
そうそう。これは寄り道なんですが、古出里香さん、ご存知ですよね。
Obviously.
もちろん仲間ですから。
彼女、例えば糖尿病でインスリンの注射を常用していたとか、そんな話はありました？
No. Rika-chan has diabetes? I didn't know what he was talking about.
実は彼女のスカートのポッケからですね、注射器が見つかりまして、破損していたので薬物は特定できなかったのですが、
Okay, that was not no.
少々不似合いだったので興味を持ちまして、本当にご存知ありません？
I didn't know anything about Rika-chan carrying syringes around with her.
園崎家は本業の方、薬剤屋さんのことです。で、覚醒剤を扱ってるとの噂がありましてね、その可能性もあるかなんて思ってたのですが。
リカちゃんが覚醒剤の常用者だっていうのか？
いえいえ、そうは申してませんよ。ただ、お醤油をもらいに行くついでに注射器を持っていくってのは、どう考えても変ですからね。
No disagreeing with that. I have no idea what any of this means. My eyes are spinning. I feel sick.
大丈夫ですか？看護師さんを呼びましょうか？
大丈夫ですから、話の続きを。
まあ、注射器の話はそれだけです。それだけが個人的に気になったもので。
Rika-chan.
リカさん、村のマスコットみたいなところがありましたからね。
She had like diabetes. Someone would probably know.
今、村は騒然としてるみたいですよ。盲信してた年寄り方と、殺してしまった園崎家とで。実効支配していた御三家も、ほぼ全滅状態。
Well, the Furudes literally don't exist anymore, right? Like, they're done. Kimiyoshi's, I mean, they were already falling off. Sonozaki? Yeah. GG. I don't think I need to say anything on that one.
こんなタイミングでまたダムの話が出てきたりしたら、今度こそ間違いなく敗損でしょうな。
もう俺、ひなみ沢とは関係ありませんから。
That's an interesting kind of point. I actually was. I just said it because the thought about Hinamizawa being abandoned was unpleasant. I wanted to end the conversation quickly. There was a knock at the door. It opened slightly. My mom asked if we were still talking.
ありゃ、無駄話が過ぎましたか。参ったな。
I looked at the clock. 5 minutes were long past. I told my mother that there was something he really wanted to ask, and if she could wait a little bit longer.
そう手短にね。
There wasn't any getting around the fact that she was thinking about what a police officer could be talking to her son about.
日を改めた方が良さそうですね。
Bro does not want to do that.
大石さん、ミオンは今、どうしてるんです？
I wanted to just hear that answer and then get rid of him.
それを話す前に、前原さんに一個だけ、本当に正直に答えてもらいたいことがあります。
何ですか？
And this question's gonna be like... It's gonna be wild, isn't it?
本当に真面目に答えてくださいよ。
He's getting serious.
これ、いい加減なこと言っちゃうと、場合によっては、捜査撹乱と見られて、告発される場合もありますからね。
Well, Wishi-san kept threatening me until the end. What the hell did he want?
前原さん、シオンさんを突き落とした犯人は誰だと思います？
ミオンしか考えられないじゃないですか。
では、あなたを刺したの誰です？
何度も言わせないでください。ミオンですよ。園崎ミオン。
Was it at the same time? Is that what he's about to say? Oishi-san smiled bitterly and dabbed at his forehead with a handkerchief to wipe his sweat. Should have expected that answer, yet it looked as though he wasn't satisfied with it.
シオンを突き落として、俺を刺して、ミオンの犯行だって、さっき大石さんも認めたじゃないですか。
シオン殺しの犯人がミオンだという根拠は、隣人の男の証言によるものなんです。この隣人ってのは、実は暴力団組員、つまりシオンさんのボディーガードだったんですよ。
I see.
このうちのリーダー格が古参で、園崎姉妹が幼いうちから親身になってた男なんだそうで。
That man said this. The noise he heard from next door was just like the sound of a fight between the sisters that he was used to hearing when they still lived together. And no, there was no doubt about it. He said he heard Mion and Shion insulting each other and heard them struggling. At first, though, he thought it was a hallucination. She was having, brought on by her dementia. You see, he thought that because that sort of ruckus had been occurring every night. However, that night had been longer than the rest, and he claimed that he went to her room to give her a sedative. The noise died down while he got the manager to give him the key. Oh. Sedative. Interesting. He'd already decided he'd at least check up on her, and after she wasn't answering his calls, they took the plunge and unlocked the door. And they saw that the room was a mess. Since Shion had been pushed over the balcony, they decided it had to have been Mion. And that's how it happened, but then, where was she?
つまり、壁越しに聞いたというだけなんです。しかもこのマンション、組の関係で住人がほとんどいないんです。ですから、この騒ぎを聞いてたのも彼らだけ。
Perfect cover-up.
重ねて言えば、園崎ミオンを目撃した者は誰一人いないんです。
見なくったって、そんなの、ミオンの犯行だってわかるじゃないですか。
まあまあ。だから、つまりですね、あなただけが、あの晩、確かに園崎ミオンを目撃した、もう一人の目撃者のシオンさんは生きておられませんからね。
Right.
大石さんが何を言いたいのか、よくわからないんですけど。
At that point, Oishi-san paused. The fact that this was a no-smoking area completely slipped his mind, and he took out his pack of cigarettes again. Check. He lit one with his lighter, and exhaled a long stream of tobacco smoke.
あなた、本当に園崎ミオンに刺されたんですか？
Is this where he asks, I feel like he's implying that it might have been some weird attempt at suicide. Perhaps because of some kind of drug. Maybe. I feel like that's kind of what he's leading to.
はい、間違いなく。
The smoke Oishi-san breathed out floated away, like a thundercloud swept away by the wind.
大石さん、ここ禁煙です。看護師さんに怒られますよ。
実は、園崎ミオンも、井戸の底から見つかったんですよ。
What? What? Am I gonna left click and the chapter ends right here? No.
転落死です。あの井戸の隠し通路から逃げ出そうとしてはしごを降りる途中に足を踏み外し、そこまで転落し、首の骨を折って死亡したとみられます。はい、シオンさんと同じにね、首の骨を折って。
I literally don't know what to say. What?
あの日、前原さんを気絶させた後、園崎ミオンは隠し井戸から外へ逃れようとして、足を踏み外して死んだのです。まるで そこに突き落とした他の犠牲者の死体に呼び寄せられるようにね。
Might not have been an accident, but
それじゃあおかしいじゃないですか。
検視の結果、間違いなくあの日に死亡したものと確認されました。
she was already dead.
あなたとシオンさんを襲ってからあそこに戻ったんじゃない。あの日にすでに死んでいたんです。
My jaw was on the floor. There was absolutely no way that could be. Mion was the one that stabbed me. It had to have been her. It wouldn't have been anyone else to do it.
じゃあ誰が俺とシオンを襲ったんですか。誰が。
あなたを襲った園崎ミオンなのに園崎ミオンじゃない何者かですよ。
Yo, I have chills, like straight up. Oh my, holy goosebumps. What? My mind had become a complete mess. I'm starting to lose my ability to think straight.
高野美代さんの死覚えてますか。
Right. Dude, I actually thought this chapter was going to be over like an hour ago. I'm not going to lie. I have no problem continuing to play, but I can't believe it's not over. There's more.
高野さん。はい、確か遠くの山の中で焼け死んだって聞いたような。
Was it the same distant mountains?
あれは考察された後に焼かれたことが分かってます。検視したのは岐阜県警さんなんですけどね、これがちょっとおかしいんですよ。初期の検視結果では死後24時間経過って出ちゃったんです。辻褄が合わないってことで大慌てで当日死亡って改ざんしたらしいんですが。
What is going on? This might be being an absolute wreck over what was going on with Mion. He was telling me there was even more on top of that? I didn't understand the complex things Oishi-san was telling me.
この死後24時間って検視結果、かなり信頼できるものらしいんです。つまりどういうことか。
Then who was in the storehouse is the question.
これは何度も聞いた質問になりますが、あなた綿流しの晩、高野美代さんに会ってますよね。
合ってます。
その前日、お祭りの準備の日にも会ってますよね。
Right.
私もその時お会いしてますし。
ええ、合ってますよ。
死後24時間ってことは、お祭りの前日の晩にはもう死んでるってことになるんですよ。
そんなはず。
お祭りの準備の時には生きていた。でもあなたたちと一緒に西宮殿に忍び込んだ時、高野さんはもうお亡くなりになっていたのです。
The origin of all that had happened. The beginning of everything. Our intrusion in the ritual storehouse, which I had come to regret countless times. The one who tempted me. Takano-san. When she invited us into the storehouse, she was already no longer of this world?
今回の事件、死人が歩き回りすぎなんですよ。
Yeah, right? An incident caused by a dead person and ended by a dead person.
園崎美音の死亡時間を事件当日ではなく、あなたを刺した直後に改ざんせよとの圧力も来てるみたいです。この事件をとっとと終わらせようとする外圧でしょうね。
Yeah, I guess so.
ですので、今の話はどうか他言無用に願いますよ。
Oishi-san grabbed his jacket that was hanging on the chair, put out his cigarette with the bottom of his foot, and started pretending to wave away the smoke floating around.
長居しました。あなたにとっての事件をせめて終わらせてあげようと思って来たつもりだったんですがね。かえって煙に巻いちゃったようで。
Yeah, no kidding. Absent-mindedly, he walked towards the door, looking at me, unable to speak, out of the corner of his eye.
もしも今後話したいことができたらいつでもお電話ください。さっきのお土産の中に私の名刺が入ってますんで、その時はまた素敵なお土産を持ってお見舞いに来ますよ。
Oishi-san, seemed to think I was still hiding something. That I, after all this, would be hiding something. I'm the one things are being hidden from. I'm the one who wants to know.
では、またいつかお会いしましょう。お大事に。
Slam. I listened to the tap 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 of Oishi-san walking down the hallway. I still couldn't return from my state of bewilderment. He wanted to end this incident as it applied to me. It was over. Nothing was over. The incident was still continuing. Huh? Then slip, an arm covered in fresh blood, came out from underneath the bed. I wasn't that surprised. This was an illusion I was seeing, seized with fear.
ケイちゃん。だから言ったでしょ
I heard a guttural voice coming from under the bed. I still recognized it as Mion's voice.
なんだ、ミオン。何を言ったって？
私、あの日に警告したよ。今日以降。私の姿を見たとしても、それは私の屍に取り付いた鬼なんだよって。
そうだな。言ってたよな。ごめん。ちょっと注意が足らなかったな。だから刺されちゃったんだな。
Possibly wounds sustained when she fell from the ladder. Many of her fingernails were broken and torn. Don't. Her arms slowly felt about on top of the bed, searching for mine.
あのさ、ミオ、俺今、こんな冗談を考えたんだ。聞いてくれるか？
The Mion under the bed didn't answer.
例えばさ、俺が今日、ここで死んじゃうんだよ。だけども、明日以降もここにいて、普通に生活してみせるんだよ。で、後で、それが大石のやつに分かって、またしても死亡日時が合わない。死んだはずの人間が生活していたって言って、泡を食って大騒ぎするんだよ。高野さんにミオ、そして俺で3人目。な？面白いだろ？笑えるだろ？
I don't even know what to say to this scene right now.
ケイちゃん。
笑えよ。それとも、あんまり面白くなかったか？
Mion's blood-stained hand groped around and found my wrist. Though her fingernails were torn, she gripped it hard, as if scratching me.
加減しろよ。痛いって。
ケイちゃん。迎えに来たよ。
I tried to shake my wrist loose, but the strength she held it with was unbelievable, and I couldn't. It was only gripping one wrist, and my whole body wouldn't move. I couldn't even twitch. My fingers were spread apart, and I couldn't make a fist either. And the fact that I couldn't make a fist reminded me of the restraining table. I felt a crooked nail press against my left pinky fingertip. Mion's forehead was split open. With a face covered with blood, she smiled and got right up, just behind me.
何も終わってない。何も終わってない。この事件は何も終わってなんかない。まだ続いてる。まだまだ続いてる。誰かこの事件を終わらせてください。この残酷で無残で気の毒で悲しい。この事件を終わらせてください。それだけが俺の望みです。
あの時、一つ叶えてあげたでしょ？今度はダメ。
Right now, I'm just kind of going with the flow and trying to kind of think about what any of this could mean. I really have nothing. Mion firmly held the nail down on my fingertip, and with her other hand, She slowly swung a mallet up into the air and... There it is. Woo! We might pass on that for this episode. Do I really want to do an entire video of the all-cast review session, though? I probably will. I don't really want to do it just this moment. So let's talk, I guess. What the hell just happened? So in the first, like, hour or so, I was sitting there like, wow, they're really, like, telling us so many things, right? What's even left to uncover, right? And then in the last hour, they're like, psych, you're not even close. Nice try. There are still 6 more chapters, right? Don't forget that, right? And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Just, what? Oh my god. Dude, I don't even know what to think. Like, so I guess I'm going to go back to Old Reliable and just kind of summarize things, and then maybe that will help spur my thoughts. I mean, we started the episode by just going to Mion's house and having a really long conversation with her about the Sonozaki family's, like, history and just some of Hinamizawa's history in general. It's pretty dark, right? That cycle of discrimination, being discriminated against, discriminating, being discriminated against, and it just keeps happening, right? So to kind of break out of it in a way, it seemed like Oryu had decided that the village had to band together, and anytime somebody wronged them, right? I mean, it was basically an eye for an eye, except you take 1 eye, we take 2, right? You know, everything you do to me, I'll do back twofold, right? So that was kind of their mentality, and I mean, it kind of explains why Hinamizawa is still so, like, feared and hated, but you can also clearly see it when you see the, just in general, the way that, like, I mean, that one, the incident, right, with the thugs, right, when he knocked over the bike, right, the way everyone banded together, it's kind of horrifying, right, but they really do stand up for their own, right, and it probably is because of Oryu, right, and that's kind of something to keep in mind. But the interesting thing is just Mion, just everything Mion, right? So first of all, I mean, she seemed relatively normal for the first hour or so, up until the murder dungeon. Was she just acting? Is there any validity to this idea that there's, like, different personalities and they're, like, uncontrollable? Right, for Mion, I don't know. Dude, everything in my head is just going back to those last, like, 30 minutes. Everything in the hospital. That hospital scene, like, everything, I thought things were fairly resolved, right? And it quite literally, just instantly, the game was like, psych, you thought. Oh my goodness. I don't think we really need to summarize the murder dungeon, right? The important thing in all of that is just Mion's characterization, right? There's lots of these bits of, like, where she's like, I think the important bit is that final warning she gave, that after today, it's gonna be the demon. And I still don't, like, what does it mean? What is the demon? I don't know. Because it's very clearly that's a very different personality, right? And it makes you wonder, right? Things like, I don't know. I mean, obviously, like, what causes it, right? What causes someone to act that way, right? Don't completely know, right? And then you also got to keep in mind, like, it's just, okay, that's jumping ahead. I guess I guess there's nothing saying I can't jump ahead. But like people are acting like so strange sometimes. Hinamizawa, like crazed, right? What causes that? Like that can't just be a normal thing. That's so many. Like we've seen several Hinamizawans have that little stretch, right? You know, specifically Rena and Mion, right? I wouldn't be surprised if it's more, right? In Mion's case, it was kind of like she made it sound like it was like something that had been given to her a long time ago, that she had like fought away that demon, right? We're gonna keep calling it a demon, right? Because I don't really know what else to call it for the time being. That demon, right? She fought it off, and then the series of events, right, where Keiichi just kind of continuously mistreated her, never apologized, even at the point where he was apologizing, he never apologized for the original sin in her eyes, right? I honestly don't. I don't want to say she didn't care about the storehouse, but I don't think that was important to her as Keiichi, and like everything he did, right, or didn't do, right. And so I guess that left her vulnerable, and they made it sound like, you know, like that is what caused the change, right? I mean, most people don't change into psycho like murder nut jobs, right? Upon that treatment, right? Would they be happy? No. Would they maybe murder the person who made them felt that way? Sure, maybe, right? If they really want to, right? But it really wasn't just that, right? Like, it doesn't feel like it's just that simple to me, right? I mean, nothing in Higurashi is ever just that simple, right? That's just how Higurashi feels so far. And so it's like, seriously, what causes that shift? And I mean, like, Rena too, right? What causes this, right? And the injection theory still kind of holds true, and we can kind of eventually jump ahead to the hospital, right? Right? And where they mentioned they found Rika with a syringe. I mean, like, and it was a destroyed syringe. I personally, instantly think back to chapter 1, that syringe that we saw back then, obviously, right? What is it? What does it mean? Right? Is the syringe what's causing people to go crazy? An interesting thought that I just had is the complete opposite. What if it's like Hinamizawans are crazy, right? And not just because they're Hinamizawans. I assume there's some real explanation. I don't know what it is, right? Immediate thought is like just something in the environment itself for some reason drives people, like maybe something like I don't know, some chemical from the swamp, right, makes people go crazy and start hallucinating things and go murder mode, right? And maybe this syringe stops that. Maybe that's why Rika brought a syringe. Maybe she was like, I'm going to give you a little injection, Mion, and then you will be fine, right? Maybe. I don't know. I don't really know that we have enough evidence one way or the other to say what exactly that syringe is, but it's pretty obvious that the syringes are pretty central. They're like, there were rumors that the Sonozakis are involved with what psychostimulants, they said. Like, I think it's pretty safe to assume that something is going on, right, with those, right? Is it because I guess now I'm thinking I mainly thought that because I couldn't think of Rika bringing an evil syringe, but like in the last chapter they told us it was like that syringe is going to make like Keiichi die the way Tomitake did, right? I don't know if they actually said die, so I wonder if maybe he misinterpreted that, because right now I'm wondering, like, what if like a lot of these events are just unreliable narrator, right? Like especially chapter 1, a lot of those events feel like unreliable narrator, so a lot of things I don't know how much to take at face value, right? And then I guess it's the same with Mion, right, where a lot of what she says is unreliable because she flip-flops so often. It's so hard to know what to believe this early in the game, right? So hard to believe, or so hard to know what to believe, right? So we'll just kind of talk about the hospital, the big bombshell, obviously. So I mean, like, I guess, you know, jumping before that, yeah, Keiichi gets shanked by Mion, right? But the thing that makes that really shocking, that was just like a Mion tracked you down, right? Or it seemed like it in the moment, Mion tracked you down, you're gonna die now thing, right? That, but the reality is that Mion was dead. That wasn't Mion. And how could Mion have been in basically two places at once? Right? One thing I just latched onto is I remember them talking about how Shion saw Mion in everyone. I mean, what if the same thing happened to Keiichi? Right? What if that was just someone else and he saw them as Mion? Right? I don't know how exactly that would work, but I think a psychostimulant, and I'm like, I could maybe see that, right? Induce some weird state of mind where, like, they kind of see what they want to see or what they think they're seeing, right? That could kind of explain, like, a lot, I guess, right? In theory, the idea that those syringes are making people just like see other people when they look at someone. Maybe there's something to do with that. It's still way too early to say. I probably shouldn't linger on this theory for too long. There's a lot of things I just want to get out there, partially so that when I rewatch the video, I remember what I was thinking, because I will rewatch this before I upload it. And I have a little Word doc, right? Well, little, it's like 5 pages already, with just a lot of things to remember, right? Even if I don't necessarily think they might mean something, just things to remember. Just writing them down helps me remember them, right? And so I wanted to make sure I could remember it. I'm like, that's an interesting idea. But Takano too, right? It feels like it makes you wonder. In chapter 1, was the same true? Was Rena dead? I don't know. Spending so much time just pure theories with nothing to go on. I should probably wrap up this episode, especially because next episode is probably just going to be me doing the all-star review session, watching all that, seeing everything they have to say. It's probably going to be a pure theory episode, so I probably should relax on the theories a little bit right now. Right? Just a little bit, right? Given that we're closing in on the 4-hour mark. Wow. Just, yeah. If we're mostly done theorizing, I think there's not a ton else to say. This chapter was bananas. And I mean the chapter as a whole and chapter 12. Like I said, everything seemed so resolved, and then Higurashi reminded you there's 6 more chapters, nothing is resolved. Nice try. I really for a second was like, where are they gonna bring this game? You know? I thought chapter 2 as a whole was phenomenal, right? Literally the way they baited me into thinking it was all resolved, and then they flipped it on my head. I'm just like, right? And like, chapter 1 was great. It was always great, right? I think so far I'm crazy recency bias. I honestly don't know if I can really try to rank them against each other. I was gonna try and say I liked chapter 2 a little more than 1, I think, but honestly, it's been so long. No, I just rewatched chapter 1 though. I think I have a relatively recent perspective on things. Now that I think about it, I don't know. Both of them are so crazy, such different directions. This game is phenomenal. I am looking forward to playing chapter 3 so much. Today's session was phenomenal. I think we've already talked about it so much, right? So much information gleaned. How much of it is true? How much is there, because I think a lot of the backstory of the Sonozaki family is probably true. I think we can probably assume that is mostly factual. Regarding the husband of Oryu? I forgot his name. I remember close to something, in my head it's like Shohei, right? But I think it's close to that. It might be like Sohei, right? I don't know. Whatever his name was, right? His history, how he got his fortune, and how that created Hinamizawa into what it is now. I think we can mostly buy that. Everything after that, Literally, there's so much to decipher, and I think we're gonna mainly try and decipher that next episode. We're probably just gonna leave off here at this point. Phenomenal, phenomenal chapter. I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode and the conclusion of this whole chapter after 2 years. I don't know when the next session will be. It wouldn't shock me if it's in 30 minutes. But I hope you guys are looking forward to whenever that video on the All-Star Review session comes out, or All-Cast Review session, whatever, same difference, right? Whenever that comes out in the theory video, right? The video after that should be the start of Chapter 3. So I hope you guys are looking forward to that as well. I don't know when they're going to come out. Like I said, I've given up on promises. They're kind of pointless. I was never good at keeping them anyways. So I don't know when they're going to be out, but whenever they do come out, I hope to see you guys there. Peace. What the fuck?